Commission. The first item on the agenda is meeting minutes. I was absent at the last meeting on January 9th. We have minutes from then. We also have minutes from our planning meeting on January 18th, which I was at, so we'll take these separately. I'll recuse myself from the meeting minutes on January 9th, although I did listen to the tape and got up to speed for the substantive matter that we'll deal with later. So for the vote, I can call it to a motion and just, great. So substituting will be alternate Commissioner Elliott. Nope, not here. Commissioner DiGiacomo. Okay. Very good. So I'll entertain a motion on the meeting minutes for January 9th.
Second.
So Commissioner Corcoran moved and seconded by Commissioner Francis. Anybody have any comments on those? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'm abstaining. So the next minutes are from January 18th. That was our planning session. Can I have a motion on that?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Corcoran, second by Commissioner McAleese. I reviewed that. It's pretty short. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the January 18th minutes are adopted unanimously. Next item is new applications to recommend a public hearing. The first is a zoning regulation amendment, application of Post Road Residential LLC to amend section 10.18.3 to permit ground floor connection between buildings for common amenity space.
Mr. Chairman, this proposal is related to item B below it. The Knights of Columbus project that was the regulation proposal that was approved by this commission. There was the special permit was denied, so item B is the special permit, but item A is they're proposing to make an amendment, an adjustment to the regulations that the commission approved to allow some common amenity space. The regulations as they stand now require the buildings to be separated, and they're proposing to allow for a ground floor connection for amenity space along with their recently resubmitted package for a revised special permit, which is item B below it. Both of which require public hearing.
Very good. Thank you very much. And that's pursuant to the new TOD that we...
Correct, the transit-oriented downtown district. Right.
Excellent. Thank you. Have a motion? Do them separately. Yeah.
Move to public hearing.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner McAleese. Any discussion on this item? This is coming back to us now as a resubmission on the Uncle Road application.
One question. Could you refresh me, did we change the TOD regulations to require buildings of just such a certain size, and that exceeded it? Is that why we did that?
The modifications that were ultimately approved included the requirement that the building be more than one building rather than one single building.
So we didn't change the regulations, we just asked this applicant to...
There was some discussion about the length and size of the footprint of the building, that it be broken up, the massing be broken up. But you also set a maximum cap of 90 units total. The original application was for 116 units.
Right.
And the 50 bedrooms per acre calculation remains, but there's a cap at 90 total units.
But again, it was for this applicant.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, no, it's not this is a regulation amendment. It's not specifically for this applicant. But there's a companion application in item B, which we'll get to in a moment, which is an application then pursuant to the new regulation. Very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All in favor of moving this item to public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? It's moved to public hearing unanimously. Next is 2B, 333 Umpqua Road, special permit application of Post Road Residential LLC, and request for a transit-oriented downtown district designation pertaining to a 90-unit residential development.
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Very good. This is the actual application they're now resubmitting for the development. Can I have a motion?
Move to public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner McAleese. Okay. Any other discussion on this? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Move to public hearing unanimously. Next is 2C, 41 Fairfield Beach Road, special exception application of Fairfield Beach Club for a 25-foot 4-inch by 5-foot 1-inch kitchen addition in the A zone.
Beach Club on Fairfield Beach Road is a long-standing membership club. They're doing a modest addition to their service kitchen. It is an addition to the existing use. It is special exception use, therefore requires a public hearing.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Move to public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner McAleese. Any questions or discussion for staff? Question, Mr. Francis?
The berm, we didn't really do a berm regulation, did we? An overall, I think it was 11 feet.
Are you referring to the coastal site plan application? Right, no, so that was an application pursuant to existing regulations. There was some debate about whether the berm should be 13 feet instead of 11 feet and so forth.
Right.
It was ultimately approved based on the existing regulations. But that has nothing to do with this application for kitchen
That was my
addition.
next question. Do they have to comply with the 11-foot regulation because they're doing construction?
No, they don't. There's not a... There's a little bit different profile of the beach where the beach club is. There's not a dune between the beach and the improvements here. So you'll see it when the plans are submitted. But no, the short answer to your question is no, there's not a proposed berm.
So if there was a berm in between the area where they were doing work, they would that would implicate revisions
Well,
to the berm?
the issue with respect to the matter that we heard previously with those two houses, there was concern as to whether or not, first of all, our primary concern was that the existing dune that exists on those sites, on those two properties remain, and then there was some discussion as to the merits or the pros and cons of raising the elevation of that. There is no such dune profile along the frontage of this property. It's a different beach profile.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this isn't part of our plan that we're going to implement such things?
No.
In conjunction with flood erosion control. That is-
Well, they may review the plan and comment on it, but this particular addition doesn't create any impact on that matter. But again, they'll have an opportunity to discuss that.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Francis? No? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Motion is to move to public hearing. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? It's moved to public hearing unanimously. Next item is old business, 3A. That's 1-59 Post Road. Zone change application of 1 Post Road, Fairfield LLC, to establish a designed commercial district on land presently zoned Residence C. We'll get to roster after we hear from
Okay.
Mr. White.
Mr. Chairman, this matter is, there's two pieces to this application. As you know, the zone change piece and the special permit, they're kind of linked together, so I'll kind of intertwine them, but then we'll have to circle back and make two separate votes here. The existing parcel at 1 Post Road is the site of an existing 3-story commercial office building. The parcel at 59 Post Road is the site of an existing 1-story retail building. The applicant proposes to demolish the building at 59 Post Road and merge the two properties for the purposes of establishing a mixed-use site for the construction of the 20-unit residential building, which is the subject of the special permit component. 34 additional parking spaces are provided for a total of 126 spaces to be utilized by both the office building and the proposed residential building. The first component of this application is a zone change. The front half of the site at 59 Post Road is zoned Design Commercial District, while the back half is zoned Residence C. The applicant is proposing to extend the Design Commercial District to the rear portion of the site that is zoned residential to establish uniform zoning for that parcel. The standard conditions for zone change consideration are as follows. Number one, is the proposed consistent with the plan of conservation and development? 2, does time, experience, and responsible planning for contemporary or future conditions reasonably indicate the need for the proposed zone change? 3, have circumstances in the neighborhood changed substantially to warrant the requested zone change? 4, has it been demonstrated that the proposal is warranted and would serve the general health, welfare, and safety of the town? 5, does the proposed zone change promote a level of development that would serve to protect property values in the neighborhood and enhance the community? 6, would the proposed zone change permit a level of development that would increase undue traffic congestion? The second component in the reason they're seeking the zone change is the special permit and coastal site plan for the construction of an elevated residential building comprised of 2 floors of residential apartments elevated on piers with ground level building access lobby and at-grade parking beneath the building. The existing office building is 30,300 square feet in area, and the proposed residential building totals 27,508 square feet. The Design Commercial District allows mixed-use commercial and residential uses provided there are no more than 2 floors occupied by residential use, and the residential use does not exceed 50% of the total floor area. The regulation anticipates that all uses will be in a single building. This matter was reviewed by the Zoning Board of Appeals in February 2nd of 2017, and a variance was approved to allow the residential use in a standalone building rather than to require a connection between the 2 buildings. The residential use does not exceed the 50% limit of the combined total square footage on this site. There are 92 parking spaces existing for the office building. The plan will add 34 additional parking spaces for a total of 126. Parking regulations for a standalone residential project of 20 units would require 3 spaces per unit, or a total of 60 spaces. The applicant is requesting that the residential component parking be reduced to 1.5 spaces pursuant to section 28.6.1 of our regulations. And that section allows the commission the discretion to reduce the residential parking by 50% in commercial districts if the commission finds that the total number of spaces, in this case 126, provides economies of scale in which it's reasonable to anticipate that the peak occupancies of the respective commercial and residential uses will be served by the total number of spaces provided. The applicant indicated that 1 parking space would be assigned to each of the 20 units underneath the building, with the balance being common spaces. There are 2 existing curb cuts along the post road frontage that will be eliminated, and the existing office building egress drive will be widened to provide for the sole ingress lane and 2 double left-hand, 1 left-hand turn, right-hand turn egress drive. There was a traffic report submitted with the application that estimates that the residential portion of the development will generate 10 vehicle trips in the morning weekday peak and 12 in the evening. In both the Post Road and Grassmere Avenue intersections are anticipated to continue to operate at level of service C. There was a coastal site plan piece to this application as well. The applicant is proposing to remove fill and debris that has accumulated over the years in the rear of that piece at 59 Post Road, and is proposing to enhance the tidal wetlands area. More significantly, the plan entails extending the existing public access walkway that exists along 1 Post Road across the rear of 59 Post Road to create a continuous public access walkway along the waterfront. The new concrete sidewalk is proposed, excuse me, along the entire frontage of the Post Road. In accordance with the inclusionary zoning provisions of our regulations, 2 of the 20 units are to be deed restricted as affordable units at 80% of the area median income. The considerations for the special permit are found in section 25.7.7. Is the development shown on the site and architectural plans of such character as to harmonize with the neighborhood to accomplish a transition in character between areas of unlike character, to protect property values in the neighborhood, to preserve and enhance the appearance and beauty of the community, and avoid undue traffic congestion. During the course of the hearing, there were a couple issues that came up that should the commission support this application, recommending several issues that should be considered for potential conditions. And they agreed to this at the hearing. The existing public access easement will be updated on the land records to include extending the public access as proposed across the rear of the property. They need to submit a roof plan showing the location and height of the utility equipment that they discussed. Their proposed tidal restoration work and any repair of the existing revetment at One Post Road will require permits from DEEP, and those permits would need to be obtained prior to issuance of a building permit. In all enclosed areas, all enclosed ground level spaces shall be provided with proper flood venting and shall comply with the National Flood Insurance requirements for flood resistant materials. And lastly, they agreed to submit a revised affordability plan following the model of the Affordable Housing Committee, and they agreed to establish one unit as ADA compliant and also include a van accessible handicap parking space. That is the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. So you summarized both in
Correct.
your comments?
Yeah, you need to first consider the zone change component.
All right, so just for members of the commission, the first application that we have before us is the zone change, and then the second application, which we'll get to, is the special exception. So I was absent from the live meeting, but I'm fully up to speed on the matter. Listen to the tapes. Commissioner Meyer, you were absent, but because I had the lone magnetic audio tape, you were unable to listen, and I apologize for that. It was, believe it or not. So the video failed, and the backup video failed, and the backup digital audio failed, but lo and behold, the
old school cassette tape
old
was there.
school magnetic tape succeeded. And the problem was that the tape player that the office had failed. So I had to find a dictaphone machine in my office that still used the old school cassettes in order to listen to this using the foot pedals to moderate the sound. It was a
That's dedication.
it was an experience, I'll tell you. But anyway, I apologize. So you'll recuse yourself from this.
I will recuse myself, although I think this is a interesting
Right.
project.
Right. Thank you. So we had Commissioner Giacomo on the last one. So Commissioner Gordon, you'll sit in for Commissioner Meyer. Okay. So with that, then I'll entertain a motion with respect to the application for the zone change.
I propose that we accept the zone change.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Corcoran, second by Commissioner Levy. Commissioner Corcoran, you want to start?
Sure. In terms of changing the zone as it currently exists was drawn, I assume, long ago without regards to property lines. And what's left here is a small piece of residential zoning that is not accessible from the street, I don't believe. And one of the houses has been torn down that was there. And the interior part of this piece of property, again, is inaccessible. To me, it only makes sense to join it to a commercial zone, or the zone that's being proposed, so that it can be used, and we have a good application for the use of that zone.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Levy, any comments? You need, just use your microphone if you would.
Particularly in light of the fact the existing residence piece is landlocked, it makes so much more sense to merge it with what's currently basically a commercial district abutting the office building. In fact, the project would actually restore residential use to the rear of the property, so it becomes full circle.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting in that respect, right? That, because of the mixed-use nature of the application, we have to, in order to approve it, we need to rezone the residence aspect to commercial so that we can put a residential building on it. It's a little odd, but true.
Whoever said zoning is supposed to make sense.
Yeah, well, you know. Well, thank you. Anyone else comments? Yep.
Yeah,
Commissioner Noonan?
everything said earlier I agree with. I didn't get any sense of the effect on property values. Didn't see any opposition from the neighbors. No issue regarding traffic. Felt like a good application that met the 6 criteria for a zone change.
Right. Good. Commissioner McAleese?
No, nothing to add.
Nothing to add? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're all fairly on the same page in the comments. I think in the context of the criteria are that, you know, time and experience and responsible planning does indicate a need for the change. You know, circumstances in the neighborhood haven't really changed substantially, but it's a landlocked parcel that is part of, you know, a commercial area. I think the proposal is, you know, would serve the welfare of the town because it does enable the development of the entire parcel and the other aspects of the considerations that we have to take into account, I think are met. So I'm in favor of this as well. Anybody else have any other comments? Motion on the table is to approve the zone change. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The application is approved unanimously. The next item is 3B, 159 Post Road, special permit and coastal site plan application of 1 Post Road, Fairfield LLC, pertaining to the construction of a 20-unit residential building in the design commercial district.
I don't have anything beyond what I already
Okay.
reported.
All right, very good. This is the special exception application, a special permit, it's a coastal site plan application, taking advantage of the zone change that we just passed. Does anyone have a motion?
I make a motion to approve with the potential conditions as outlined by staff in the document.
Okay. Can I make a friendly suggestion on that? And we'll talk about it, but I think we also have to include some allowance for the reduction in the parking as an additional...
Right, you need to make a finding with respect to their request to reduce the residential component parking.
Right. So I would suggest that we include that in your motion.
Let's see, make a motion to approve with the reduction of the residential parking by 50% and along with the conditions. Is that sufficient?
I think so. I mean, I want to talk a little bit about the specific reduction, but I think that gets us where we need to be for now.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Noonan. So motion was by Commissioner McAleese with conditions and seconded by Commissioner Noonan. So if you want to start?
I'd like to, I mean, we talked, oh, thank you. Excuse me. We touched on a lot of the issues with the zone change. I like what they're doing for the public access. I like that we're getting additional affordable housing units. It's nice to have residential back on the waterfront there, and I think it's going to really do a lot to clean up that property. We have a nice commercial building existing, and then there's other 2 small buildings that, you know, I think it's going to, as one neighbor pointed out in the public hearing, they would like to see a good, I forget how they, like, gateway to Fairfield, and it is the gateway. It's right on the edge of town, so it would be nice to have a nice development right on the edge of town.
Very good. Thank you very much. Commissioner Noonan?
Yeah, I thought it was a good application. Met the, you know, the objective criteria. As far as the reducing the residential property, seemed like the...
Parking, you mean?
That's right, excuse me, thank you. The parking, seems like they'd be, as far as parking goes, staggered, with residents being more off business hours than the office building being during business hours. So any issue, I mean, they'd essentially, as I said, be staggered. When 126 for both the office building and the residence, it would strike me that that would be more than sufficient for that, for those 2 uses. Looks like it hits the considerations of the special permit. It was good building, no issues with traffic, protected property values, And it seemed like it'd be a good building, you know, it was an attractive building. Again, nice gateway to Fairfield. I thought it was a good application.
Yeah, Commissioner Gordon, can you use a microphone?
Okay, that should
In
work.
stereo.
My thing was when I went to look at it, and one concern I thought of is that it's walking distance from the train. So will people still be parking there during the day? Like you're saying, it's going to stagger, but is it going to be overloaded during the day if people are using the train and not taking a flight to work during the day? That was one thing that struck me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. As I understood it, the applicant is going to assign one space for each unit. And my question related to parking as well in terms of the 50% reduction. So what is that actual calculation if we just simply say 50% reduction? Is it the 126 or is it some other number?
They're actually a couple spaces above what they would need to have.
That's my thought.
They're adding 34 spaces. At 50%, the number would be 30, so they're 4 spaces beyond 50%.
Yeah, so we have the discretion to reduce it up to 50%. We don't have to reduce it all the way to 50%, right? I mean,
right. I mean, if you're inclined to accept their parking plan as it's proposed, that is, you know, a 40-something%. I mean, you can just make a finding that you think that the 126 total parking spaces is sufficient pursuant to that regulation.
Right, and that number, that should be the number. And I think this goes to your question, is whether there is actually going to be that stagger. I think that Commissioner Noonan is correct that there should be sufficient parking given the, you know, the variances in the use. But if we reduce by 50%, that gives them this extra 4 spaces, which over time they might do something with. And if they're only required to have 122 and they have 126, there might be something else that comes down the pike that they say, well, you know, maybe we want outdoor dining. Just kidding. But something.
No, I understand what you're saying. So we can modify that
right.
to say that if you're inclined to approve this, that the finding would be that the reduction in parking to 126
is the number.
Is appropriate, rather than saying 50% rate. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, so I don't know necessarily that you have to amend your motion to do that. I think I understand the gist of where you're going with that.
I mean, I think that's fine. So Commissioner McAleese, do you accept that amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Noonan?
I do.
Okay, so we do have an amendment to a specific number and seconded. All right?
I just have a question.
You've recused. Yeah, I'm sorry, but you've recused yourself from the executive session on this, and it wouldn't be appropriate. Apologize. Commissioner Levy?
Yeah. In terms of the parking, to be familiar with the buildings there, you know, you're going to have the office building and the residential parking are going to be basically out of sync. So I don't think there's going to be any problem, you know, in terms of parking congestion there. I like the cleanup of the coastal area, the extension of the easement. I think it'll improve the traffic ingress and egress by moving the entrance away from, you know, the existing commercial spaces at Grassmere Avenue, moving it further to the east. I think it'll actually make it safer. And we got bike racks, so I think that's great.
No, I mean, the sidewalk is the public access way there is really, it's a very nice improvement.
I wish it had kayak storage, but that's not in our purview.
You can lobby for that when we're looking at it.
They might ultimately.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I think that for the mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, you know, that this should be adequate. All right. So, I mean, I think that given all the discussion here, we've decided that you know, if a vote to approve is that they met the various requirements of the considerations. And I think that the proposal also, harmonizes with the neighborhood in terms of the type of construction. Does anyone else have any other comments? Questions? No? Okay, the motion on the table is to approve with conditions as stated. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The application passes unanimously. Okay. Next item is compliances. First is 900 Richard White Way, coastal site plan application in the town of Fairfield pertaining to a proposed screening berm of the Public Works aggregate storage and processing yard in the floodplain district.
Mr. Chairman, I'm joined by the Director of Public Works, Joe Michelangelo, who was before this commission back in the summertime. In the Public Works yard, as you know, has a fairly large fill pile. The proposal is to use that fill pile to create a screening berm around that work area to provide some screening to the neighbors to the south. This matter was presented to the commission back in August. We got some late comments, basically same day of the meeting comments from the Connecticut Fund for the Environment and from the Connecticut DEEP that raised some concerns that led this commission to make a motion to send that matter to public hearing. Subsequent to that meeting, the initial application was withdrawn. The town went back and had several meetings with the neighborhood group, as outlined in the material that we submitted to you. There were some substantive changes to the plan that resulted from that. And we now have in your materials a letter of support from the Connecticut Fund for the Environment and the two Fairfield Beach Road Neighbors Associations that were involved in the discussions. And it's our opinion that it's consistent with the relevant coastal resource policies. Mr. Michelangelo is here if you have any questions about that process or what the specifics of the plan are. But it's our hope that in the fact that those issues were raised and it went back for more public outreach and redesign, I think, is a good thing. And the neighbors, I think, are showing their support as a result of that.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, and thank you, Mr. Michelangelo, for being here. Does it make sense to have a short summary from him before we entertain a motion? Since
Sure. Thank you very much. We tried to include as much of the correspondence as possible between ourselves and some of the groups involved, and we had a very productive dialogue back and forth, and I think it led to a improved plan from what we submitted in the summertime. And just to highlight some of the changes, we moved the earthwork further away from the coastal wetlands, so we have a further setback than the minimum required. Another great suggestion was to taper our slope to create another bench. So now we have a series of 3 benches, one at the bottom, mid-level, one at the top. In addition to that, there were some drainage concerns, so we expanded the amount of detention on site to capture all the runoff. So once again, I think the revisions were excellent points. It was a great process to go through, and it yielded a plan that I think will be great for the Public Works yard and our neighbors.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. With that, I'll entertain a motion, and then we can have discussion. Anyone?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner Corcoran. Thank you. Commissioner Noonan, any comments?
I have no comments right now. I just so I defer right now.
Okay. Commissioner Corcoran?
No, not yet.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments? Commissioner Francis?
I commend the department for regrading the berm. It seems to lead to much better runoff and satisfaction by the neighbors and
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? I would like to say the process worked. The transparency of the application being published, being brought forward for the commission, and then, the public engagement leading to your, revision of the plan and accommodating everyone. The only feedback that I've seen has been in support of the revised plan, both from the public constituency and another public official. I don't believe we received any negative comments with respect to this revised plan. And so, that's really a terrific thing. Yep. So, I would encourage everyone to support this. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Okay. Motion is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The revised plan is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Michelangelo, for coming. Next item is 1691 Fairfield Beach Road, coastal site plan application of Mark and Diane Burton pertaining to the construction of a single-family dwelling in the Beach District.
Mr. Chairman, there were the single-family house that was on this property has been recently demolished. The proposal is to rebuild it to a FEMA-compliant structure. We have a staff coastal site plan report and an email from the DEEP stating that they don't find any inconsistencies. They find no inconsistencies with the coastal resource policies. It meets all the requirements of the beach district. There is a low seawall in front of this property, so there isn't the issue of berm height as we had in some previous applications.
Thank God.
The three adjacent properties all have a seawall, so that's not an issue here. And it's our opinion that it's consistent with the coastal resource management policies. That is what you are looking at in a coastal site plan review.
All right. Terrific. Thank you.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner McAleese. Commissioner Noonan, any comments?
Relying on a quick summary, everybody seems to approve or find no inconsistencies. Should be approved.
Commissioner McAleese?
Yeah.
Same? Yep. Anyone else? Right. So, in these matters, we sit in our administrative capacity, and if the application complies with our regulations, then we should approve it. And the opinion of staff is that it's fully compliant, and the input we've received from other divisions reviewing this say the same. So, any other comments? Motion is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The application is approved unanimously. Next is 1275 Post Road, compliance application of David Woodowitz for facade modification in the Center Design District.
This building is a portion of the brick walk. On the first page, there's kind of a location map on the right-hand portion that shows the building at 1275 is, Citibank is out by the street, then there's a linear building and then an L shape in the back. We're talking about that rear portion that for many years has been occupied by Bagel King, and there was a Japanese restaurant adjacent to it. Those two tenant spaces are being combined into a single tenant occupancy. And so what they're looking to do is remove those two little mansard, or actually three mansard overhangs, one on the side of the building and two that face into the parking lot, and redo the fascia on that portion of the building to kind of unify the storefront, if you will, since those two tenant spaces are now being combined. So that's really the essence of this application. The signs will be kind of similar to others in the complex, but it's a facade modification to remove those three kind of mansard overhangs and propose more of a flat, fascia to unify that storefront.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for discussion purposes?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan. Second by Commissioner Levy. Thank you. Mr. Wendt, is the proposal consistent with our design regulations?
It is. The only thing that's a little different is that it's a little bit different than the other storefronts on the building, but their position is, since this is so far rear to the site, that they want to try to tie them in together to try to make it look, in their view, is a more attractive look.
Yeah, I mean, the overhang there is much more receded,
Right.
closer to the face of the building.
Correct.
And do they have a tenant? Just point of curiosity. It
They
says
do, there's a
Brickwalk
restaurant
Tavern.
tenant that's looking to combine those two spaces to form a single restaurant.
You can always use more taverns. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Commissioner Francis?
Rain protection that is being removed, kind of a roof.
Those existing mansards stick out. I mean, they did it, those I think were mainly done to create a sign band for the individual tenants, more so than anything else, because there is an arcade underneath the building. If on the left-hand side going, going down, those existing facades, there's an arcade that runs underneath there.
You can see the archway. The archway there. The restaurant actually goes further back, or that space that's now the Japanese restaurant
Right.
actually goes further to the left, underneath that archway, behind the archway. So there's actually a covered area there that people could congregate in if they needed to.
And similarly, along, on the perpendicular face of the building that faces the parking lot, inward of those overhangs, there is an arcade along that whole frontage, along all those stores. There's another restaurant in there that has some outdoor seating, and so you can walk, weather protected, without, independently of those overhangs.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No, the motion is, yep.
Just
Commissioner
one. I
Beckles?
mean, I'm inclined to, I like the new elevation. I think it's a nice look. There's something that bugs me a little bit about having the remaining ones on the other building, but we can't figure the other building at this point, so. It does look nice. I like the unifying that whole corner. It's going to be clear that the entry is under the arch.
Yep.
This is all one place. So.
We discussed that with the applicant.
Yeah.
We share that concern that if you're doing it here, why not do it for the rest of the building? They may, down the road, they're not prepared to do it now. Their response was, well, it's kind of a separate, even though it's kind of connected by the arcade, they're kind of viewing it as a separate building. They may ultimately do it, it's just they're not prepared to commit to it at this point.
And, I mean, in the photo in the upper right, they're removing the overhang on the side of the building as well.
Correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, I see it. I think it works. I think
Oh,
it's going
sure.
to
No,
look...
it's a great look, and I think, I like the brick walk and the business that they bring to the area, and it makes for a vibrant, healthy downtown, so I'm all supportive of it. That's
Yeah.
just the architecture that comes out.
Yeah, we agree, it would be nice to do the whole building at once.
But that's okay.
They may ultimately do that, but they're not prepared to do it presently.
Very good. All right, we ready to vote? No, yeah, Mr.
Are
Martin.
all these overhangs the same width? The side view of the one on the far right, is that the same width as the other two, or
Good question. I don't think it is. I don't think they are. I think the one on the side is shorter. It's not quite as wide.
Not the same type of a...
It's the same style. You can kind of see it on the floor plan, the dashed line showing what's being removed. It's not quite as wide. I think it's the same dimension away from the face of the building, but it's not quite as wide.
Okay. Good.
Yep. Right. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, the motion on the table is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the application is approved unanimously. And that takes us to public hearing. We'll take a 2-minute break. So this is the public hearing portion of our meeting. The first item, which I'll call in conjunction with the second as they're related, the zoning regulation amendment application of Edward Mazereski to amend section 12.5.17.5 of the zoning regulations regarding exercise studies. And the second item is 454 Tungus Hill Road, special exception application of Edward Mazereski to establish an exercise studio in a portion of an existing building in the neighborhood design district.
Oh, that's a typo. It should say studios.
Hello, members of the board.
Hello.
So I currently have a Taekwondo school on 32 Berwick Court, across by Pepe's Pizza. I moved there 7 years ago. Before that, I was on 908 Woodland Avenue for 25 years with my martial arts school. So I moved to Berwick 7 years ago. I'm starting my 8th year. The landlord wants to reutilize the space. My lease came up, he wants to reutilize it. So he asked me in November, could I start looking? And the very first spot I looked at was Tungus Hill. And I met with the realtor, and we wanted to start going with a lease, but then we found out that because it did not say, it just said dance studio or art studio. It has a very lot of things you can use there, laundry facilities, bakeries, and it's in the letter there. So that's why I'm here. I would like it to say dance studio or exercise studio, not to extend 4,000 square feet. But my space that I'm renting there is only 2,700 square feet that I'm looking to move into. I have about 80 students, but the good thing about my business is everything goes from 5 to like 9 or 9:30. I don't do, so the businesses that are there now, I wouldn't be affecting them at all. They have ample parking in the back, and I think what would be good, it would be a good movement. It's very close, 1 mile from where I am by Pepe's Pizza there to this new location. And most of my parents and students are all from, this area here. I get quite a bit of business from Fairfield, and I've been in business for a long time, and I'd like to stay in Fairfield. And it's a nice location, and that's what brings me here tonight. I just would like to see a change in there, and then maybe I can move in and start operation. But that's the only thing is when I went there, it doesn't say it on there exactly.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner Noonan.
So we had a kind of a similar proposal a few months ago where a yoga studio wanted to move into a similar type of building, and in that instance, we had found that the yoga studio was an exercise facility. Would you agree with me that kind of yoga and martial arts could be pretty close, pretty similar in uses?
Yeah, I would say yoga is a little more a softer kind of,
Yeah.
And
But
mine is...
really no different than yoga, which we approved earlier.
Yeah, right,
in
yoga
the
is similar.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the question is, do you consider martial arts and your training and instruction to be a form of exercise?
Oh, yes, definitely, yes. 'Cause all the workout is, it's,
That's probably clearer than what I was asking.
Right. Commissioner Levy?
And I think your Taekwondo studio is basically an open space.
Yes.
With mats.
Mhm.
Just like a dance studio is open, a yoga studio is open.
Mirrors, I have the mirrors all around,
Right.
yes.
So it's basically an open area to
Mhm.
exercise as opposed to let's say, a gym or a
There's
recreational
no weights or
facility.
nothing like that, we don't do any of that, none of
No
that.
machines, nothing.
Right, no machines, no weights, it's all open space, so we need that to, do our floor combinations up and down, and they do sparring and stuff, and they do forms, they practice, so they need that open space.
So structurally, it's basically the same as a dance
Yes,
studio.
Yes. Where I am now is a beautiful spot, nice, open, I'd love to stay there, but he wants to do something else with it.
So, what about competitions or meets? I don't know what the right term is.
Yeah, like tournaments?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do those there. We travel when we go to tournaments, and basically, if you go to a tournament, they do it in a gym, like a school like this.
Mm-hmm.
And, the school, if you were to sponsor the tournament, you would rent a gym at a college or something like that. You
Right.
wouldn't do it on site like that.
Right. So, do you have a team at the
Yeah, we go to quite a few tournaments. Yeah, we have like a dozen or so that will go.
Yeah. So I think that might have been the point of distinction, right? That an exercise facility doesn't have teams that have competitions where you might get a draw of additional people, and whereas so like a sports facility might have a team that would have competitions in the location. I mean, I think this is something that we can
I've
talk
seen-
about in executive session.
I see CrossFit now on ESPN, though.
Yeah.
So-
No? Right, yeah. If we found that this was the equivalent of an exercise facility, would you be willing to agree to a condition of approval that there be no tournaments or meets held in the facility?
Oh, yeah, we wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't be able to house, it would be too big, you know, if you invited other schools to that spot, where would they all go? It would be,
Exactly. And that really is the nub of it, because it's in a neighborhood design district, right? It's
Right.
not meant for that, and you've got only a limited number of parking
that's
spaces.
right, that's right.
And if you, put up advertise for a tournament and had 5 teams come in,
Yeah,
there would
it
be,
would- right.
even though there'd only be one match going on,
Mm-hmm.
that could pose a problem. But that may be one way to, skin the cat, so to speak.
Right, right.
All right. Does anyone else have any other comments? Questions?
One question perhaps for staff. If we approve the amendment to the zoning regulations, do we then, will the applicant still require a special exception, or will that take care of it?
Yeah. Mr. Went?
Jim Went, for the record. There are actually 2 components to this application, the regulation amendment and the companion application. There is a special exception application as well to actually establish the use here. So similar to what you did earlier tonight on the 159 Post Road application, you'd have to consider both, first the zone change or regulation amendment component, and then later the special exception component. So that is a companion piece to this. So there is a site plan and letter describing that. So if you've got questions about the particular use, then you could address those to the applicant.
Right, thank you. And that should be clear. So the question that you just raised, and we can talk about that in the executive session next meeting when we, consider and vote on the application as to whether we need to approve an amendment in order to allow the use and so forth. But if we have any questions about the special exception application, let's ask them now. We've kind of been talking about the use and the facility and so forth, but if anybody else has any other questions about that, we should ask them now. No? Okay. Anything else?
No, great, that's good.
Okay. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Is there any member of the public that would like to be heard on this? Yeah. Either one?
Just briefly, Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development for the town. I've been working with the business owner and the property owner to try to navigate the regulations as it relates to this project. I think it's a fairly modest text amendment. It's consistent with the intent of the Neighborhood Design Business District in terms of its providing services to the neighborhood, and it's very similar in use to others that you've considered, like dance and art studios. So we're in support of this application. I think the conditions that you've discussed in terms of not allowing meets or tournaments seems to make very much sense. So it's a very reasonable condition. So I'd ask you to approve this. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Scott Paglia. I'm a resident in the area. My concern is, as is often brought up, parking. The address of this property is Tungus Hill, but the parking lot is off of Marlborough Terrace. Marlborough Terrace is in between this address on Tungus Hill is Scap Motors. I understand the applicant said there is plenty of parking, but if this building were being built today, it would require 33 spots. There are currently, depending on how you count it, either 18 or 19 parking spots. Now, he has stated that he has 80 people in his group. I'm just concerned, as I said, with the parking. SCAP parks their vehicles on Marlborough Terrace, and again, that's where the entrance to this parking lot is. In addition, right across from it as well, there's a multifamily house that does not have a driveway, so their residents park on the street. And the one side of Marlborough Terrace is not really conducive to parking because it's on a slope. So if people are parking on both sides, which they often do, and there are people getting out of cars, there are passengers, they'll be parking even further from the curb. So as it is with SCAP and the residents, Marlborough Terrace often becomes, in that area, a one-way road. And if you're going up and down Ridgely, trying to get across, your sight lines are already blocked. So if there's going to be more people parking, and again, not necessarily ample parking in the lot that behind the building, I'm concerned with the overflow, in addition the extra vehicles, and then you're going to have pedestrians as well. So to me, that's just, well, I understand why he's looking to move there, and I understand that, and I just find that it's a safety hazard, and there's just not enough space for what will be required.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other member of the public wish to be heard? No? Excellent. Well, could we have you just back up here for a sec? I have a question based on that. Do you know what was in the space before you saw it?
Yeah, I understand it was a Bible store where they sold religious, like Bibles and clothing for...
Retail store?
Retail store, yes.
Okay. And how is your current space about the same size as this new space?
Yes.
And about how many cars do you have coming at any one time for a class? Like you said, you had 80 students, but maybe 15 in a class.
Right.
So it's you know, there's a certain amount of people that's coming at any given time. About how many cars does that translate into?
Well, a lot of the times, like, a lot of them will drop their kids off. Like, if it's 5 o'clock, they will drop off. Some parents do stay, but not many. And they'll go shopping or they'll come back. When class goes 5 to 6:15, 6:30. And then we try to have that little break, 6:30. The next class starts at 6:30. We try to end at 6:15. So some are leaving, the other ones are coming. So mostly class, I would have a class, maybe 10. Like when I left to come here tonight, I have a few Blackwells there watching the school. I said, what's going on? They said, well, we had 15 kids for the first class, and then the adults come next. They had 8 adults. It goes like 6:30 to 7:30. Sometimes it'll roll over to 8 o'clock. But because a lot of them drop off, not many stay. And when they pick them up, that's when we have the, you know, some are dropping off and some are picking up for the next class. So I try to get it so it works.
Right.
So, but the parking lot we have now only has about, how many cases? Like maybe 12 spots? Because I'm right at the end of that dead-end street, Berwick Court. So yeah, of course, some can park on the side street.
Does your lot fill up at any given point?
It will at times. Like we have class on a Saturday. Well, on a Saturday it might fill up. On Saturday, class goes from 10 till 3. But again, it's not the whole class. We'll have 10 to 11:15 and 11:30 to 12:30, and the last class ends at 3.
What are the other hours of the operation?
Now I go on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I go from 5 to like 8:30, 9 o'clock. On Tuesday and Thursday, we get through an hour earlier. It goes from 5 to about 7:30, 8 o'clock. On Saturday, I go from 10 till 3. And sometimes, the thing about my business is, because it's a martial arts school, if some of the parents were being, you know, like if they had a problem, if you came to me, where I was on Wood Avenue, there might be a problem. But I would tell the parents, listen, you know, respect the neighbors. You know, if you don't, you can't park there. And I said, if you do it again, you got to leave. I've had parents where I had to tell them, you know, if you're not going to follow the rules of the school, 'cause especially on Wood Avenue, it was off-street parking, and they might park in front of some guy, the neighbor there, and give him some lip. And I said, listen, he's my neighbor. I have to get along with him. So if you continue to act this way, you can't come here. You know, you have to, you know, follow the See, with the martial arts, a little different. They have to follow the rules of the school or you're out. And,
Gotta follow the credo.
Well, yeah, no one's gonna, I would say to them, this is part of the
I have a
respect,
smile, but
Yeah.
I appreciate it very much,
Right.
I do. Commissioner
Yeah.
Noonan?
In your current spot, are you the only tenant?
Yes. Well, then we have Ray Gaines, who has it's really Ray Gaines' building. He does the construction. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Ray Gaines,
No, I've
Gaines
heard-
Construction.
yeah.
Some of you might be. But he had his office there. And during the day, he had like 5 or 6 cars parked there. But since I start at 5, they're gone by 4.
Yeah. Do you know the other uses in this, at 454 Tungus Hill? What other tenants are there?
Yeah, there's a dog grooming. And then there's the hair salon, right? There's a hair salon there.
Okay.
And they do most of their business. They're done by 4 o'clock, right, George?
Yeah, if you have somebody else here from your team, maybe they can, that are familiar
Yeah.
with the other places in the
Sure.
the landlord or something, then if they could
There's
come up,
Dr. Santella, he's the owner, if
Yep.
he owns the property.
that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sal Santella. I've owned the building for 47 years. We've had a variety of tenants there. The bookstore that was there literally ran out of business because of the mail order book system. There's plenty of space. There's 19 spaces. And there are spaces in front, which would be on I guess the north side of Tungus Hill. The other side is a no parking, but in front of my building, there are several spaces available to be parking over there too. So when it comes to the availability of parking, there's plenty. And nobody that uses the property right now, those 2 units of grooming and beauty shop, park on the street at all. They use the parking lot 'cause there's a lot of spaces there.
Are there business hours 9 to 5 or somewhere close?
I'm sorry?
Are the pet groomers and the hair salon during the
Their
day?
hours are up till about, the beauty shop's till about 5. The groomer might go to 6, maybe.
Okay, but they don't go into the evenings and...
On the week, are they open on the weekends?
That's my-
Saturday morning, Sunday?
Yes, Saturday morning for the hairdressers, all day Saturday for the groomer. No Sundays, and no nights.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Anything further? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I'll close the public hearing on this item. Okay, next is 1675 Post Road, compliance application of 1675 Post Road Partners LLC pertaining to a 12-unit residential and retail development submitted pursuant to 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in the Center Design District.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Fallon. I'm an attorney here in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I'm pleased to be representing the applicant tonight, 1675 Post Road Partners LLC. It's our proposal before you tonight to construct a 12-unit multifamily residential and retail development, as we will lay out to you tonight, at the property located at 1675 Post Road. With me tonight is Mr. Rich Granoff and Gwen Mulcahy, Granoff Architects. Rich will be making a brief presentation. Mr. Joe Versteeg, who's been our code consultant with regard to the project. Mike Galante, who you know, who's our traffic consultant. And Mr. Mike Petula, who was responsible for the site engineering. Not here tonight because of an unavoidable family commitment is Matt Finkel. Matt's the principal of 1675 Post Road. He regrets not being here, and he very much appreciates your time and wishes he could be here. I mention Matt particularly because he's a very experienced and well-regarded developer of multifamily housing in Fairfield County, who among other ventures has worked closely over the years with the Diocese of Bridgeport in rehabbing surplus diocese property for residential use. Indeed, he is the owner, having purchased from the diocese the adjacent Bishop Curtis House, which is and will be continued to be utilized for senior housing adjacent to this proposed building. The proximity of this property to the railroad station and the downtown make it ideal for the contemplated residential use that we propose. The development will consist, as you know, having read the material we submitted, of 8 one-bedroom and 4 two-bedroom units, 8 one-bedroom and 4 two-bedroom units. As the call indicates, the proposal is submitted pursuant to Connecticut Affordable Housing Land Use Appeals Act, Section 8-30G. In the course of my presentation, I will briefly summarize the law surviving that area. I know this commission is very well familiar with it, but I know the chair appropriately likes me to put in the record the nature of considerations to be made with regard to an 8-30G proposal, and I will do that. You will note our affordability plan as required by statute is in our material. It's at page 3 through 23. You'll also have received, I believe, a letter from the Affordable Housing Commission dated January 17th, 2018, endorsing the project. I'm not going to read that letter to you, obviously, but I will highlight it because after presentation, this letter approving and supporting this application, I think makes some very good points, which are somewhat redundant to our points, but I think coming from the source of the Affordable Housing Committee, they bear repeating. The Affordable Committee found that the design fits well within the character of the neighborhood adjacent to Bishop Curtis House and St. Thomas Aquinas Church. The developers have significant experience in building and managing affordable housing properties. The developers will make one of the affordable units ADA compliant, addressing a significant need for accessible units. The developers modeled their affordability plan on a model affordable housing plan and reporting requirements prepared by this committee. The committee approval is conditioned upon the developer allowing 4 units, 2 one-bedroom and 2 two-bedroom units to be designated by the commission. They did in fact designate those units, those that they would like to see be made affordable. We would agree to that, and that should be a condition of approval, and we will amend our affordability plan accordingly. They do also say, as I'll discuss, that there was some consideration or concern about the matter of mixed use, which I will address in the context of an 8-30G, but the committee finds in this instance those concerns were mitigated by the fact that the project is located in the Center Design Business District and that having a ground floor retail use is desirable and consistent with the town's goals as expressed in the Plan of Conservation and Development. And I will discuss the matter of the mixed use momentarily. As I said, 12 total units, 4 will be affordable for a period of 40 years, covenanted as such. 2 of the units, 1 one-bedroom and 1 two-bedroom, will be reserved for persons earning less than 60% of the statewide median income, and 2 of the units will be reserved for persons earning less than 80% of the statewide median income, thereby meeting the requirements of the statute. Although not required by the statute, the applicant will designate, as the letter from the Affordable Housing Committee indicates, one of the affordable units be designed for handicap accessibility, and we will work in conjunction with the Affordable Housing Committee with regard to that. Based upon the experience that we have had and that my clients have had, we anticipate the units, both affordable and market rate, will be occupied by people over 50 and or younger people who want to stay in Fairfield, both groups of which will be attracted, we believe, by the proximity of the railroad station and the downtown. Let me address the matter of mixed use because this commission has seen many affordable housing applications and is very sophisticated with regard to that. I don't think we've seen a mixed use component yet, so let me address that. First of all, I think it's important that we start with the statute. The statute 8-30G-A1 says and defines an affordable housing development means a proposed housing development which is assisted housing or in which not less than 30% of the dwelling units will be conveyed by deeds containing covenants and restrictions which are required that such dwelling units be sold or rented at or below prices that will preserve the units as affordable housing. And then it goes on to talk about that 80 and 60%. You'll note that there is in the statute no prohibition about the applicability of some aspect of mixed use in an 8-30G. Indeed, the very components of mixed use, which have found themselves into 8-30G projects that I'm aware of in both Branford and Litchfield, there is a sense that some sense of amenity retail helps from a financial standpoint make the affordable units more sustainable, thereby benefiting the purpose of the application. The second point I'd want to make is that this application proposes a building of 16,742 square feet. Of that, 1,040 square feet, somewhere between 6 and 7%, will be dedicated to that first floor amenity retail. So in the context of principal accessory uses, academically speaking, you have a building here, the overwhelming use of which is, in fact, residential and qualified as an 8-30G project. 16,742 overall, with only approximately 1,000 square feet dedicated to retail. The third point I'd want to make is that your own zoning regulations make provision for, and indeed mandate, in the context of mixed-use projects involving affordable components, that a component, in that case I think 30%, has to be dedicated to non-residential use occupied on the first floor. Perhaps most importantly, however, is the case law. The first case that I want to provide to everyone.
Can you just give him the stack and let him pass it around? Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll give you the extra copies back.
You know I like to do the Vanna White thing. This is Town Close Associates versus New Canaan Planning and Zoning Commission, a case decided by Judge Modelis. You'll see it's an 8-30G application, and in the very first paragraph it says that the application for a site plan approval to permit the construction of 104 housing units and 14,790 square feet of commercial space on a 3.6 acre business zone parcel. You'll note when you read the decision, Judge Modelis makes a very thorough analysis in approving or sustaining the 8-30G appeal. Nowhere in this opinion is there any reference, either by the Commission or the court, to some defect arising because a portion of the development was in fact mixed use.
Right, but was the argument for denying the application that it was a mixed use?
Never mentioned by the Commission.
No, all right, so that doesn't answer the question.
Well, I think it does, because I think it partially answers the question, because if I finish, if the court found that there was some provision within the statute that prohibits or preempts mixed use in the context of 8-30, but I think before we argue about that...
No, that's fine. I understand your point, but it's not positive law in the sense that it answered the question directly that, you know... All right, good.
Which one?
First one. The first one.
Oh, isn't that coming your way? You don't have one?
I think I got the last one.
There were only 9.
The second case is Cortese versus the Planning Zoning Commission of the Town of Greenwich. I put a tab on each one of these. If you would turn to the tab, you'll see that in this case the court states, and it's the second to last paragraph, the legislature in all of its amendments of the affordable housing legislation has never imposed a minimum number of units nor a prohibition on mixed-use application for an 8-3 housing development. Accordingly, this court should not read a minimum requirement or a restriction on use of the property where it has been implied, where it has not been implied by the legislature. Therefore, the scope of the review undertaken in these appeals is under 8-30G.
No, that's good, that's good. So, and I can understand how you might have a very solid argument here that the de minimis nature of the commercial doesn't, impinge upon the overall, I don't want to make your arguments for you, but the overall affordable housing nature of the building. Where do you draw the line?
Well, I think you draw the line, and I think if you read that whole case, that Cortese case...
I didn't have it before, but I will now.
Right, and let me just have it back there for a second. In this particular case, ultimately, what Judge Monroe finds in her determination, and this is at page 9, is the commission denied the
hold on. Page 9, right after the tab.
Right.
And where are you?
It's footnote 8. It says the commission denied the application primarily because they perceived it as an attempt to bootstrap an illegal expansion of a non-conforming use through the construction of a single affordable unit.
There was only one in this case?
Yeah. And she sustained the commission. And I think that gets to the point of your question. Where do you draw the line?
That was going to be my hypothetical.
I think it's
if I have one unit and I make it affordable, can I build a 5-story commercial building in the center of town?
This case, the Cortese case is instructed in 2 ways. One, it makes clear that mixed use is allowed in the context of 8-30G.
As
but
dicta.
secondly, it makes clear that you cannot manipulate the statute in bad faith.
Right. And it's very helpful, and I appreciate the case. That's dicta, the court's finding that it's not. But ultimately, the court sustained...
Well, no, I don't. I don't want to get into... They'll all roll their eyes in the back of their head, but I don't think it's dicta when the court says that there's nothing at the tab, there's nothing in the statute that precludes mixed use, and they're not going to read into the statute a limitation that doesn't, that isn't explicit.
Right, I hear you, but ultimately, it was not, that finding was not necessary for the court sustaining the denial.
We're going to get off in one of those things where people hate us. I think it's good law, but I also think it leads to a very practical answer to your question.
Yeah.
And that is something of concern. If in this case you have a pre-existing non-conforming commercial building that they want to expand as part of this application, they wanted to add something like 700 or 800 square feet, and then the applicant goes and throws a unit on top of the roof and says, we got an affordable housing application. Not so fast. And that's why it's important here. One of the things in land use law that's applicable here, is the concept of principal and accessory uses. Does it walk like a duck? Does it quack like a duck? I've got a 16,700 square foot building, and I have 1,040 square feet of amenity retail on the first floor. That's an 8-30G. And the principles of 8-30G respectfully apply. Okay, so the project description. Rich is going to give you an overview of that in a minute. I will not try to steal...
Before you get there, does anyone else, I sort of just jumped in. Does anyone else have any questions on this subject of the mixed-use nature of the application in the context of 8-30G? Yes. Commissioner Levy.
Attorney Fallon, is there any reason that it couldn't be 100% affordable housing?
The reason that it is not 100% affordable housing is, in our experience, again, the practical facility and attractiveness of first floor apartment occupancy is not very strong. People don't want to be on that ground floor. That's sort of recognized in your own regulations in this zone where you allow mixed use, but only on the second and third floor. The second answer to your question why we would prefer not to do it is we think it is a nice amenity. This is going to be very small space. It's going to be a place that will make the overall development more attractive. And the third reason, as I alluded to a minute ago, in terms of it does help make the project more financially viable. The whole thrust of 8-30G is to incentivize a developer to create affordable units, which standing alone may be at somewhat of a loss to the developer by incentivizing their opportunities to maximize development for the market units, and so the retail falls into that. So yes, we could do it. We have the parking for it. We by the way, are providing the required one space for the retail use. So we're not looking to take advantage of the 8-30G designation and say, well, we don't have to give you the parking. We have 13 spaces on site. So theoretically, could we make it 13 units and still have the 13 spaces? Yes, we could. But we'd rather not do that because we don't think people want to really live in a first floor apartment, especially in an urban setting like this. Two, we think it's a nice amenity for the building and gives an overall sense of quality, just like you prescribe in the mixed use. And three, it just makes economic sense.
But if it was a housing unit, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
We would not. We would not. And we could do that, but we have the parking space for it. But we've dedicated that one parking space now as required under your regulations, although the regs don't actually apply here. We have that space, which we're applying to the retail.
So-
We could apply it to a unit.
But your point is that for the amount of commercial space that's being provided, you meet the regulations by providing one parking
We
space
do.
for that space.
We don't
even
have
though
to, but
it's
we
not-
do.
right, even though
But
it's
we're not
required.
trying to manipulate 8-30G to avoid the parking requirement for the retail.
Understood. Commissioner Noonan.
Thank you. I just want to point your I want to draw your attention to part of this decision.
Which one are we looking at?
Last page, 10 of 10.
Which one, the...
I'm sorry,
Cortese?
the Cortese.
Yes.
Which has the paragraph starting in the context of the plenary review here. I'll read it while you read it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, yes.
The court finds the municipality's interest in protecting its zoning regulations and comprehensive plan to prevent the expansion of unauthorized nonconformities far outweighed the benefit that this particular housing, you can read on after
Yes.
that. I'm shooting off the cuff because I didn't get a chance to really read this.
Right.
But I'm curious that ultimately the judge finds that the commission satisfied its burden.
Correct.
In denial for
Right.
other reasons. But that language catches my attention that it seems as if she's suggesting that the municipality the municipality was correct in balancing normally the affordable care, the affordable housing with the nonconformity. And that while I don't necessarily just need to do what normally a affordable housing standard is, for this mixed use, I can look at not just the regular standard of affordable housing, but I can also look at what, if the mixed use, what irregularities are you trying to avoid?
Right.
And that's an extra balancing act.
I think that will come in proper focus when you've had a chance to read the case. What I think she was referring to there, clearly, was an attempt to basically manipulate the affordable housing statute in a manner that was not appropriate. Again, what the facts, which are well set forth in the case, show is you had an existing, historic, pre-existing non-conforming industrial or commercial building sitting on the site, been there for years. She, and it's all laid out in the facts, wanted to expand that building. And she made an application prior to this one to expand it, and it was denied. And so she came running back in with a new application, same proposal to basically add whatever it was, 1,200 square feet, 1,000 square feet, a lot of square footage to this building based upon the size of the building. But she said, oh, and I'm going to put one affordable unit on the second floor. And now it's an 8-30G, and you can't stop me.
No, I get the unauthorized nonconformities. Now, here we have, well, just tell me quickly, because my mind is on this, and I want just a reminder. The existing building is there an existing building?
It's being demolished, but it's there now. It is probably non-conforming itself in a lot of aspects.
Okay, and the building you're going to...
insurance building.
Thank you. The building you are at least according to the plans you're going to build, would be, if it wasn't 830G, it would be against the regulations.
Correct. It does not comply with the regulations.
Okay, but you're interpreting this to be an expansion of non-conforming use as opposed to, because her balancing act to me almost seems to suggest not necessarily the unauthorized, not expanding non-conformities, but protecting the actual regulations and comprehensive plan that we
I
have.
think when you have a chance, Mr. Noonan, to read the whole case, and then you read her comment on page 10, I think what she is referring to was that both the court and the commission were repelled by this particular applicant's very blatant attempt to manipulate 8-30G by putting one unit above an existing non-conforming building and then adding whatever it was, 1,200 square feet to it. And I think that's a proper decision. But I think that what's important here is that's the exact opposite of what we have here, where we have a 16,000 square foot building with 12 units of housing, 4 which will be affordable, and 1,000 square feet of retail.
I guess you would agree with me that when mixed use is involved, there's another balancing act that a commission needs to do to show whether that mixed use is being...
Is the tail wagging the dog?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, and I think that gets back to Chairman Wagner's comment about where you draw the line. You know, you have to make judgments in terms of applications, and in the case of this situation, you have to look at the application and you have to say, you know, is this a duck or a chicken? And what I'm saying to you is, if you look at the application taken as a whole, and you say this is clearly based upon the language of the statute, case law, whatever else, this is an 8-30G application, and the amount of retail is purely accessory, definitely the tail on the dog. Then I think, you know, you're dealing with 8-30G and you would act accordingly, and I think that's the case here. The other thing I would just say, let you comment. I think Commissioner Levy's comment is equally instructive. I think you want to look at the introduction of that small amount of retail for which we are providing the parking space. And in the context of your overall plan of comprehensive plan of development, what you allow in this zone under your regulations for mixed use, do you think it's a good idea to have that small amount of retail there? Because if that's a problem for you, we could cure it. But so you got to make that decision.
No, understood. But
do
this
we really want another unit of first floor entry level?
Okay. But my ultimate point, I guess, is not only am I doing the regular affordable housing standard, I need to go, I have an extra step when there's mixed use involved to make sure it's not, the application is not taking advantage of the 830
We're not delaying the grant.
Okay, fair enough. But there's a two-step process, the regular affordable housing and make sure you're not...
Yeah, you have to make a judgment that in the context of the regulation of the statute, that this is a bona fide 8-30G application. And in this
fair enough.
It is.
Okay. Commissioner Levy, any other questions?
Just one last, I mean, I think the irony of the situation is that retail on the first floor is actually consistent with our zoning regulations.
Yes.
And yet, there's a part of me that's concerned, and that's why I address it. I mean, the statute speaks of affordable housing, and retail isn't affordable housing. So the question is, you know, should that fall within the 830G or not?
It speaks, the only way, Mr. Levy, I would qualify that is the statute speaks of an affordable housing development. Okay? So the question that you're posing and that we're now discussing is, can an affordable housing development include an aspect of mixed use? Can there be a component of mixed use and it still is an affordable housing development? I think the answer to that, at least Judge Monroe felt, I think Judge Monpolice felt, and I think the statute would indicate yes. But the limitation on that, as Mr. Noonan and I were discussing, and it's also pointed out in the, what is it, the case away, the Greenwich case, is for it to be an affordable housing development under the statute, for example, it can't be an 1,800 square foot, 50-year-old, non-conforming commercial building that you want to add another 1,200 square feet to in derogation of the zoning regulations, and you can do that because you're going to put one unit of affordable housing. That, I think, the court made the decision, the Greenwich Commission made the decision. That's not an affordable housing development.
Right.
And I think in this particular case, yeah.
So I think we get it. I mean, we know the extreme. The
Right.
extreme was presented there, and that is the extreme.
Correct.
Okay? I think your good argument is that we have the opposite extreme here. This is much more percentage-wise, affordable housing units and a commercial development. The question is, where do we draw the line
Well, you
otherwise?
are the precedent, because an affordable housing application, as we'll discuss a little bit later, has a certain set of parameters by which you make the application. But it is not unlike other applications in that you decide each case on its merit. And precedent, you're going to look at each case, and you're going to have to make the decision with the guidance of these cases and your own common sense. Is this an affordable housing application development pursuant to the statute? And here I think that's the case. And again, the other interesting ironies is the first floor retail, modest as it is consistent with the pattern of your existing regulations in the zone that this property happens to be in.
All right. Yeah, good. Commissioner Noonan, follow up.
No, not a follow-up, a separate question, so anybody else
Mr.
wants to jump in?
McAleese.
I just have a quick, excuse me.
Sorry.
This is 2002. This is the Cortese thing?
Yeah.
So 16 years.
There's nothing else.
There's nothing else. This has not really come up.
You got the
So this is,
1995, 2002.
this is going to be kind of,
You don't know of any other...
it's going to be a big
I
thing.
know of developments where there are aspects of misuse, but they weren't appealed, they're not subject.
You don't know of any other appellate decisions that entertain 830G with commercial aspect in it?
If you can find them, but
I looked, I couldn't find it.
No, it's good. A simple answer to a simple question.
The answer is
Was Cortese appealed further?
no.
Okay. Commissioner Noonan.
Thank you. In either of these cases or the developments that you, affordable housing developments, 30% of the units.
Correct.
So I take it when we have a mixed use, you're not counting the retail spot in, like, you take the overall square footage, for example, and take 30% of that. You're just taking 30% of whatever the residential aspect of it is.
I'm basing the requirement for the affordable units on the number 12.
On the number of units, not the whole...
No, I know, I just...
Because the statute's required, I think I said, interestingly enough, if you take out your calculator, if I have 13 units, I still come out with 4. So, it's...
Yeah,
It
so
doesn't-
you're getting the same number of units under the statute.
Even if I added a first floor residential unit, I'd still come up with 4 affordable units, based upon 30% purchase. But the affordability component is based upon the number of residential units. 30% of the units, residential units, have to be affordable. So
Okay.
it is a little unusual, but I think it's perfectly, I would end this part of the discussion, subject to further questioning. I think it's perfectly legal and appropriate legally under the statute and the case law I've given you. It happens to be consistent with the pattern of your own regulations in this zone, which does not allow first floor residential use in a mixed use development. And 3, it makes for a nicer, more attractive, I think, development for the community and also the residents of the building.
Very good. Anyone else have no more questions on this subject?
I just have one last, and then we'll end it. In your opinion, if you were to amend this and you had first floor was retail, and then you wanted the second floor to be office space, and then 3 floors of residential, would that fall within 830G?
I'd have to look at the percentages. I have to consider it. It's a hypothetical question that I would not want to speculate on for this record. I do know this. This is a duck, and it walks like a duck, and it's an 8-30G duck.
Okay. Moving along.
Mr. Granoff's going to talk to you about the project itself. I will not steal his thunder. You'll see there's a basement area for tenant storage. You'll see that the building is sprinklered with an NFPA system. I think it is important to tell you that we worked very diligently with Mr. Versteeg and through Mr. Versteeg with the fire chief and the fire marshal. I want to thank them publicly for this, on this record, for their attention and helping, and they met with us numerous times. We wanted to make sure that we would be in total compliance with, obviously, the building and fire code, but also have them very comfortable with public safety considerations. You have in this record, I'm sure should be, or I would ask that it would be, there's an email from last Thursday, January 25, 2018, from the chief. And in that email, he confirms that in order to satisfy any concerns that he or the fire marshal would have, we, meaning the applicant, have agreed to sprinkler fully with an appropriate NFPA 13 system, not only our building, but the adjacent Curtis House building, which is now owned by Mr. Finkel. And that certainly can and should be a condition of approval. But the big point is that the fire department, the fire chief, has reviewed these plans, has helped us consistently with regard to finalizing these plans.
Very good.
And we will do that.
I do not have a copy of that email. in my-
I have one.
Mr. Wendt, do you have it?
We have the record, so you can put it,
Yeah, we didn't get it.
the page after the packet was.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see that if you wouldn't mind passing that around. We can just take our,
Did you have it? Because mine has a trailer email on it.
then don't. We'll pass that one around.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, well,
Very good.
we're here, Mr. Bruce, but
I appreciate that.
what's important is that in your consideration of the application, we have agreed to sprinkler as a condition of approval the adjacent Curtis House building, which we own, and which I think is something that the chief is very supportive of, and obviously benefits the existing residents who are there.
He asked you to do it because
Yeah,
he was concerned about fire access to the Bishop Curtis home.
Correct.
Because the building is too close to allow ladder access to the existing apartment
Well,
building.
the other
That's the notes from the
code. However,
review.
good point, thank you. We moved the building as well. As part of this collaborative effort with the chief, you received a revised set of plans last week, I think. And the only revision in that plan from the original is the building was moved how many feet? 5 feet. It was moved 5 feet forward, thus creating that access that he was concerned about in the code review. But in addition to that, we also agreed after further discussions, we addressed the code-related issue, but we also agreed in the spirit that he was working with us and we were working with him to sprinkle the Curtis building.
No, that's good. Does the, and I wasn't aware that the building moved. I know we got a revised plan tonight.
Well, the revised site plan was submitted, I think, last week. The architectural plans just came in yesterday, only because we wanted to make sure there were no further changes that the chief might want.
That's good. So does, to your, knowledge, moving the building at 5 extra feet provides the ladder access to the existing apartment building that he's concerned about?
That's correct. You can have opportunity after the hearing, so opposed to reconfirm that with the chief, but the answer is yes.
Okay, good. Commissioner Corcoran?
I have a couple questions. The first one is, we had these revised plans tonight, but I can't see any difference between the two.
There's no difference. The only thing, there isn't any difference, but there is in the architectural plans, an architectural site plan, and we wanted the architectural site plan to be consistent with the revised site plan, i.e. the movement of the building. So those
site plan in here? Because
there's
I
an
don't see a difference in
architectural
that
site.
either.
There's an architectural site plan in there, I believe, is there not? Yeah, and that's the only change. The plans, it's probably somewhat redundant to give you a whole new set of plans because
Well, that's the page I went to directly.
there are no changes to the architectural plans per se. The only change in the revised plan is the relocation.
And that's exactly what I'm throwing in.
Yeah.
So that, I don't see the additional 5 feet on either of these plans.
We can show it, I'm sure, when we make our presentation,
Okay.
we'll point that out. Yeah. Okay.
So then I have another question.
No, Mr. Wendt wanted to just have a word on that last.
The plans that you received in your packet were a revised plan that had already moved the building.
Oh.
So the difference between the plans that were in your
But
packet...
we never saw the first one.
Correct.
Okay.
So we have two versions of the same
The
thing.
plan that you got in your packet today, I believe, didn't change the site plan, it only changed the perspective drawings that show a greater setback. It's hard to see the
Hard to
difference,
see it, yeah.
but that's my understanding, the only difference.
Because they're dated, they have the same date.
Correct. You had another question, Mr. Cortese?
Yeah, I had a question about determining which apartments are affordable. Because you have I don't know how many two-bedroom apartments, but they're not all the same.
No.
Some are a little bigger, some are a little smaller. How do you determine which ones?
Well, we received a recommendation. If you look at the recommendation from the Affordable Housing Committee, they say, one of their last on page 1, the committee approval is conditioned upon the developer allowing 4 units, 2 one-bedroom and 2 bedrooms to be designated by the committee, okay? And then they attach the 4 units that they want designated. And as I said at the outset, and two of them are,
You know,
yeah, so we're not.
we don't have that.
We don't have the last page.
I have 2 copies of the letter, but I don't have an attachment to either one.
So is there a statutory requirement of how they're?
The statutory requirement simply says that the affordable units have to be of like kind and,
I was gonna ask you about that.
amenities. They don't make any more specific than that. Where did my letter go? I'm losing everything. Yeah, you have,
We have the letter, but I don't believe we had the third page.
Mark, can I just?
Yeah, please. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, it's in here?
Well, that'll look, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Barnhart can confirm that this worksheet designates the affordable units that the committee is asking and recommending.
That's what they're referencing in the letter.
Right.
Is that an attachment to the letter?
It's an attachment to mine, but apparently not to yours.
Well,
But
not
Mr.
to the one in my record, but Mr. Barnhart is here.
Right.
And, I mean, I'm asking through you, was that exhibit intended to be an attachment to that letter?
Yes.
Okay, then can you please file that so that we can take a look at it and it can be a part of the record?
I'm going to get
And
one.
based on your representation and confirmation from Mr. Barnhart,
Right.
that will be an attachment
Right.
to the letter.
And the letter itself specifies that, you know, they want to have the right to condition
Yeah.
what units, and we're fine with that.
I understand that.
So these-
I don't know if that's allowable by law, and that's what my question is. So doesn't the statute and the Affordable Housing Plan dictate the choice of which units are deemed to be affordable and at which levels?
Well, the statute requires that the affordable units have to be consistent in terms of location, dispersed throughout, etc. What the Affordable Housing Committee in this addendum is suggesting or requesting be the designated affordable units is completely consistent with the statute in that they are dispersed throughout the building, they are of comparable sizes, and there are two bedrooms and 2 one-bedrooms. So there's absolutely...
Very good.
I'm absolutely comfortable with it, and as I said at the beginning, as my friend Mr. Reber will point out, the affordability plan really should include a designation of the affordable units.
Yes, well, that's what
And we'll
typically
do that,
yeah.
we'll make that, you can make that a condition of approval, but just so you know, the affordable units that we will designate, or the units we'll designate as affordable, will be those as specified by the Affordable Housing Committee.
Okay, so once that's stamped in, if you wouldn't mind just passing that around so I can take a look at that? Thanks.
Okay?
Yep, and another follow-up on that?
Oh, another question.
On that or a different issue? We're kind of jumping around a little bit because we've all looked at the record and we're all asking questions, and I don't know if you've got people...
Well, I'm going to make a brief architectural presentation. I'm going to have Mr. Galante make a brief presentation, and then if you want us to go, then we're obviously here to answer any questions we're not covering, but it's up to you, Mr. Corcoran, whatever you prefer.
What does it relate to?
The parking on the adjoining property.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and let's see if it's something that somebody else is going to present on our ad, and then just,
No, I mean,
punch
I
it
would
out.
ask,
But
I mean...
what's the question?
One of the comments from our staff were that some of the parking spaces were on adjoining property.
We took care of that. We have 13 spaces on site.
Excellent.
But thank you, you were correct, because that was, in an earlier iteration, that was a comment that was made. The units, as you can see, vary in size from 785 square feet to 1,365 square feet. As I said, we have a total of 13 spaces on site. And I think what I'd like to do at this point is introduce Mr. Granoff, who will give you a brief overview of what you've already seen apparently multiple times. And to give you more paper, I just had him run off in reduced format the boards that he will be presenting from, which are basically elevations and the like of things that you already have.
Well, good evening. Rich Granoff from Granoff Architects, and my associate Gwen Mulcahy is here as well. And we were asked to design this project for my friend and partner Matt Finkel, so I'm actually a partner in the development project as well. And I have a history of building similar projects throughout Fairfield and Westchester County, both as an architect and as a developer. So it's an interesting site. It's a long sliver of a site. It was very, very difficult to get a building to work on this property. 50 feet wide, and given the 10-foot setback from the adjacent building, which is this 10-foot setback here, the width of the building is actually 38 feet, so it's a couple of feet setback from the sidewalk as well. The architectural concept is to create what we consider a good-looking building on a prominent site on a corner, and it is intended to relate to the adjacent structure that's been there for a while, and it's a brick and cast stone facade with large windows. And from Ruane Street, you can see the view looking back towards the post road. It's the architecture. And as the building rises, there are setbacks in the facade for lower terraces.
That's not facing the post road.
Now,
That's the
this is the view from post road.
Yeah. So that long view that's Ruane Street?
Correct. The long side is on Ruane Street. I'll point that out. Yeah.
The blue buildings on the corner, the blue buildings at the end.
Right, I suppose.
There's a 10-foot setback.
Yeah.
See, the 10-foot setback to the property line, plus another 3-foot change to the building. This is about 14 feet.
And as Mr. Fallon said, we worked very closely with the fire marshal on that, positioning the building for safety reasons.
Say the distance between Augustana Homes and your building is?
It's a total of close to 14 feet.
Okay.
So it's 10 feet to the property line, from our building to the property line, and it's another 3 feet and change.
They only have 4 feet to the property line?
Yes, that's correct. That's non-conforming.
Right, okay.
Over there. So this rendering shows the retail space, which is a little over 1,000 square feet that Mr. Fallon referred to on the post road. And besides all the points that Mr. Fallon made, as a planner and an architect, I think it's really important to put retail on that type of strip and not an apartment. And as a developer, we felt strongly it really didn't have much to do with the economics of it. It just made a lot of sense to put a nice small retail store here. So now I'll take you through the plans. Okay, so given the nature of the site that we talked about, what we've come up with is on the first floor, there's a retail at the corner with access off the Post Road. And then there's a residential lobby entrance on Wayne Street that's got its own entrance with a lobby, elevator, fire stairs. And then the rest of the area below the building is 6 parking spaces. And the ingress for those cars, this is a one-way entrance. Cars would come in, park here, and then continue through out the building to where we have 7 more parking spaces on a piece of property that we have cross easements with the adjacent building based on the ownership of this building with my partner and
Excuse me.
our project
Can you
here.
go through that again? That's why I couldn't understand. They come in there,
So this is the entry. This is
Right.
below the building.
yeah.
I can point this out.
You can take the mic out of the holder and walk around a little bit if you want.
Are they exiting on the St. Thomas Church parking lot? Is
Nope,
that?
that's not happening. This one is here.
That's no problem.
So you can see here, this is the parking entrance.
There's fine.
This opening here. We're trying to kind of dress this up and landscape it so it doesn't look like a open parking garage. So this is the entrance to the parking lot here. And you can see it here. There's an opening missing in this rendering here, but basically you drive in through here and out through there onto what is this square right here is actually an easement to the building next door, which my partner owns. So therefore, we're doing a cross easement for this piece of space to give parking for our building. It's a utility easement is what it is, actually. And the church parking lot is over here.
Right.
Separate.
Utility easement, not an access easement.
That's correct.
All right, yeah, so that's important.
Yeah.
It's an important distinction
Tonight's
to make.
drawing,
They're
I
not
see.
driving,
Okay.
they're not driving through your parking lot to get to their building.
That's correct.
Right.
They're not driving through our parking lot, and we're not going on to the church parking lot for our development.
Can I clarify one other thing based upon what you just said? You said the building next door that your partner owns. Is the Bishop Building owned by the applicant and owner of this parcel or not?
Separate entity.
Separate
The
entity.
principal is Mr. Franklin.
Okay.
We can clarify that further if need be.
No, I mean, the issue arises based upon the commitment to make improvements upon the, adjoining, in the adjoining building. And Mr. Fallon represented in his opening remarks that it was the same owner, quote unquote. It's not. It's a different entity.
The managing-
It's owned by the same
The
person.
managing
entities.
member of the 1675 LLC is Mr. Finkel, who's also the managing member of the entity that owns Curtis. And representing 1675, he has authorized me to make the record clear that we would stipulate, as per the chief's request, to a condition of approval, that as a condition of approval of this application, he will sprinkler the adjacent building, which is under his dominion and control.
Okay, and so the entity of the other building has, wants that to happen? They've agreed
They have.
that they're going to allow that to happen?
Yes, and this record should so indicate,
Based upon your representation?
based upon my representation.
Very good.
And
I mean, that's a
and
that's a
duly
distinction.
authorized.
I understand, but, we're playing a little fast and loose with the, right, owners of this, that, and the next thing. And it's one thing to say, we'll do it, but it's another thing to have the recipient, which is a different entity, say, yes, we want you to come and access our building and install sprinklers in our building.
We can provide, if you feel it's necessary, through staff, a letter from the Curtis entity
Yeah.
confirming and authorizing the condition of approval.
I think that is appropriate. Thank you. Thank you.
And the access.
And the access? Yeah. Thank you very much. Yep. Commissioner McAlee.
What is the separation from this, I'll call it the outdoor parking area, and the church's property? Is there a fence or wall or something there to your left?
There are some
South.
shrubs here, yes.
All right, so there's some kind of hard separation.
Yeah.
And then where's
We're
the
gonna have, we have wheel stops here, so.
Okay.
And curbs.
And then where's the parking for the Curtis? I'm not familiar with the Curtis house, what they do, what they're about, so where's the parking? Are they part of the church?
Huge parking lot is part of the church and the Curtis House shares a massive
Oh, so
parking
it's part of
lot.
the church's thing?
Entrance on Ruane Street, just down the block a little bit. It
Yeah,
comes
it
right
comes in
up.
over here. There's actually parking along here, head-on, and then it becomes a
Fine, thank you.
parking lot. But we are not proposing to park on
Your
that
side,
lot.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so, as I said, first floor is parking, there's a second means of egress here, and there's also entry to the lobby from the parking lot through this vestibule here.
I'm sorry, I do have one more thing on this page, since you're on that drawing. We talked about you pushing the building forward or toward Ruane 5 feet with the fire marshal's issues. What about that canopy? What's the height of that canopy covering the parking spaces 1 through 6? There's no issues with that in terms of access? It looks like it projects into the adjacent
Yes,
property.
that was the subject of much debate with the fire marshal, ending with, we can keep that canopy if we sprinkler the building next door. That was the final negotiation, if you will.
Oh, I thought it had I thought the issue of moving it had to do with physical access through that alley. And is there fire equipment?
That's correct. I don't know if Mr. Ristee wants to talk to that point.
Good evening. Joe Versteeg for the record. The original placement of the building 5 feet closer to the adjoining property did pose some issues with ground ladder placement to the third floor windows of the adjoining building and a very narrow clearance between the firefighter on that ladder and that projection. So by moving the building back 5 feet, it gave perfect access for ground ladder placement and firefighters to go up the ladder and access the third floor windows.
And when we say ladder, we're talking about like a physical thing. You walk it over to the side of the building, put it up, and walk
Exactly,
it
what's
up.
called a ground ladder, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Like we use at home.
Yes, yes. So there was adequate clearance by moving the building back 5 feet. The projection is permitted by building code, and in no way is any interference with people utilizing the ladder, firefighters utilizing the ladder. That was shown isometrically to the chief and the fire marshal, and they were satisfied with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you okay with the ground floor? Any more questions?
Hot bench.
So, the second plan is a typical to second and third floor, which are the same. So basically, the core, the elevator, and the stair come up to this point here. There's on every floor there's a 2-bedroom. In the front of the building, it's the corner, very nice unit. And then there are 3 1-bedroom apartments on this floor, 800, 785, and 960, and the 2-bedroom is 1190. It's a single-loaded building, obviously, given the narrowness of the building. And there's a second means of egress down at the end. And that's the second and third floor. As we go to the fourth floor, what happens is the building starts to step back, and there are terraces. So there's 3 units on this floor. There's a 2-bedroom in the corner, 1,300 feet, with a terrace here. There's then 2 other 1-bedrooms with private terraces there. And then as we go to the top floor, basically there's a single 2-bedroom unit with 2 private terraces, and then there's a public terrace on the corner, so the building sets back from the corner. And so when I say public, excuse me, this is for all of the residents in the building, because the second and third floor units don't have terraces, so they would have a shared terrace
I have
there.
a question in this.
Sure.
So when I look at the terraces on the drawing, I see the railing, but I don't see it on the public terrace, and I don't see it on the rendering either.
That's the front of the building.
For here, the parapet is is acting as a railing on the front. And we're intentionally doing that on the corner facing the post road.
But the parapet looks the same as it does on the other railings.
Here?
Yeah.
Well, here, the parapet is lower, and there's a railing on top of that to allow for views out. Here, the parapet is taller, and it's intended so you don't see what's going on the roof.
So how tall is that wall on that roof terrace from the floor where I'm standing.
Code requires a guardrail to be 42 inches.
So I think the rendering, I mean, they look the same on this rendering. They're a straight line right across. So actually, the parapet on the front of the building is much deeper.
Well, and we're asking the same question. Code may require that, but what is it in this instance?
It will be 42 inches. The
40.
wall will be 42 inches at the edge, at this edge here. These railings will be 42 inches as well. It's a variation on an architectural theme, and we didn't think that a railing would look good along that prominent facade. That was intentionally done.
Question.
Commissioner Francis.
It appears that all the mechanicals are not visible from the street, is that correct?
That's correct, and that's intentional. And if you go to the last plan, which is the roof plan, you'll see the roof basically is a mechanical roof. There's an elevator override, there's a stair access to the roof, and then we're showing mechanical equipment, which would basically be 13 condensers, plus a few other doodads up there. So you would not see any of this equipment given the sight lines. That's intentional.
Thanks.
I have a question. I think the roof plan is wrong, if I'm reading it correctly, because it's showing the roof continuing out to the corner of the building. So you're not right there. I know the one you're on, actually.
Yeah.
At where the terrace, Mr. Corcoran was just asking about, it doesn't read as a terrace. It looks like.
Yeah, there should be a line
so
there,
that,
along here.
yes. So
That drops down.
across.
Yep,
Okay.
that's correct. We'll address that in our, final.
Okay.
So on the 5th floor plan, this tenant shared space, you're one page back.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that the roof
That's the roof of the 4th floor below.
of the 4th
So this is the
floor?
line we were just talking about, is here, is
Right,
basically
so
there.
then you go to the 5th floor, and it appears that there's, turn the page, that the building is still
So something should go here.
there.
There should be a line here.
When you say a line, I believe that the building on Post Road is flat, right? This goes all the way
Yeah, I mean,
to the
that's
5th
here.
floor on the Post Road?
Mhm.
Let me talk about the plan for a second. No. This is what's missing. There should be a line here.
What's wrong with this picture?
Mimicking that edge. From the 5th floor, this should be looking down onto the 10th floor. Here, we should be looking down onto that terrace.
If I'm here,
Yeah, just looking down.
I should be looking down onto that terrace there.
It's lower. The roof of the 4th floor.
So the 5th floor, when you say not just a line, you mean the building should end.
Correct.
Only 4 floors.
And these-
The other lines are looking at what is
Below.
level.
Thank you.
Yeah, the floor below.
Yeah.
On the
This is the 5th floor plan we have right now.
So they don't have to.
Yeah, we could
You're
just
looking
get
at
it
what's
corrected.
below.
Well, it is correct, it's just graphically.
I mean, on the roof plan, it's not.
Line like
No.
this.
Yeah, the roof plan is, needs more lines.
Oh, it does, it needs this one
Yeah.
here, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
right?
We'll correct that on the final submission.
So typically, when you see a plan like that, where that building edge ends on the 5th floor, you wouldn't have anything to the right, even though you know that on the 4th floor, there's extra space, right? I mean, you're not just going to put a line in there, you're actually going to delete.
Well,
no,
graphically, there's
it's-
different ways to communicate that architecturally.
What
I
happens is
mean,
the 5th
we're
floor-
showing multiple, like we're showing all these terraces below.
Gotcha.
Sometimes we could profile them heavier, we could have them be gray, there's different ways to
Yeah.
communicate that. We will clarify that point, though.
Okay.
And I suppose it would help if we could see maybe a sectional drawing through there that shows that parapet edge, so we get a sense of really what, because I think I agree with Commissioner Corcoran. The rendering reads, there's no parapet there. Because I don't see any depth or change in ceiling height on the elevation.
We'd be happy to provide a sectional
That'd be
drawing
great.
to clarify that, sure.
Yes, we do have elevations, but there's no section. On the big set, we have elevations. In the original set we got, there's elevations.
Is it still 61 feet?
Yes, it hasn't changed. Height hasn't changed.
But that does exceed our regulations.
So this is that step that you now see on the roof plan.
To the highest point,
Fifth floor here.
and it does step back.
Jumps down. And I
got
guess
it.
we're showing a railing. This is the This is the other end.
The parapet's not there.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
It should be lined up with that.
Right.
Yeah, I think you need a railing on that front edge.
Right there?
Or you're dropping the ceiling height on the fourth floor apartment, either way.
We'll clarify that in the section that we show.
Yeah, so what page is it?
This is A1, elevations A1.
Elevation
In the
A1.
original set.
In the original set. Well, here's the new set.
I don't think it's in there, is it? No, I'm sorry, this is the new set. I'm looking at the new set. Yeah.
So basically, you said you have to bring it up to 42 inches.
Right.
Which is the same height as the top of the railing.
But it's not, and that's not shown in the, in the plans.
And this is the front view. This elevation is on the one on Post Road.
Yep.
So that's showing the railing beyond, but nothing on this edge, so that looks like an unprotected roof at this point. But-
make sure we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the drawing, I'm looking at it like,
I think Mr.
It's A1.
has a pretty good idea
Yeah.
of what you need by way of a section.
And, yes, but he's,
if you look at, again, elevation A1, the north elevation, I can see the railing for the fifth floor apartments beyond, but there's nothing right on Post Road, and either that parapet's got to come up, like you said, 42 inches, or we have to see a railing there.
Okay, so we'll
Clarify.
submit a drawing or drawings that clarify both that section and that elevation. And we'll make sure that
Yeah,
it's
right.
clear.
But it helps understand the plan. Thank you.
Understood.
okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Just technically, as I said before, we had a code enforcement review meeting with regard to the proposal on September 5. You have those minutes. I've submitted them as part of my package at page 24. I believe we complied with all of the comments and recommendations, and that have been addressed. We've already referenced the email from the fire chief and the collaborative effort with him. Mr. Bertula worked closely with the engineering department, and I believe they have no comments. We've addressed any questions or comments they had relative to the design. And we did last week, on January 24, 2018, receive the approval from the WPCA with regard to the sewer connection, so that's been approved. Before I discuss the legal standards and summarize, I'd just like Mr. Michael Galante to give you a brief overview of the findings of his traffic report.
Before you go there, you just were talking about the code enforcement minutes. Can I just ask you a couple of questions about that? So,
Let me just,
yeah, why don't you want to grab a copy? Yeah. And some of these we may have already talked about, but I just want to make sure that we cover the bases.
Yep.
So in the TPZ comments on page 27 of your submission.
Yes.
Number 2, proposed easement for shared parking, drainage, and driveway access on the adjacent property. Is that still necessary
No.
or not? No, right. Affordability plan you submitted, including to identify the 4 affordable units, that needs to now be revised.
We would amend the affordability plan to include those 4 designated affordable units, correct?
Okay, so we'll make a note of that
Yes.
condition. Soil erosion and sedimentation plan not required, but there's a suggestion here that we have limits on construction activities and a silt fence.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Do we still have a question on how those units are determined?
Well, we're going to have to consider after the public hearing and in our executive session in consultation, I think, with Mr. Wendt and others in the office as to whether that determination can be made by, in advance, or if, and I would love for it to work out that those are the, proper units, as Mr. Fallon suggested, that
They appear to be
those are the ones that should be chosen.
They appear to be consistent with
Yeah.
the statutory criteria.
So I think that's great. I think that might be
Can I
it.
ask a couple of questions when you're finished?
Yes. Landscaping plan, I don't think I saw a landscaping plan.
That's one of my questions. Where's the planting?
Do we have a
plan?
landscaping plan?
I don't know that we have submitted a landscaping plan.
Okay, do you have an objection to doing so?
No, I mean, there's some comments
Right.
relative to, in the code from the tree warden.
Well, he says no trees are
No
necessary
trees.
in the parking lot because
Right.
it's
I mean,
covered parking. But, you know, that you did, there has been some reference and the renderings do have certain.
Yeah, sure.
you
I mean,
know,
if that could be a
um,
condition of approval, notwithstanding the fact that an 8-30G, we're as excited as
Yes.
we can be to make this a very attractive, I heard the word before, gateway building. This isn't a gateway, but it's an important
No,
building.
that's right, and we
So,
don't
yes.
have to ladle on
So, yes.
the pleasantries. There's been a lot of references to the landscaping, it's represented in the renderings, which make it look very pretty. We'd like to know that that's a plan and would be done.
That can certainly be a
Okay.
condition.
Parking is outside.
Yeah, 6.
Yeah, 6, but not 10.
Not 10,
so-
Not 10.
but that
So
can
take it
certainly
away
be a
from-
condition.
Okay, so that's great. Bicycle rack?
We have a bicycle rack?
Yes.
It's in the rear. We do
In
have a
the rear?
bicycle rack.
Thank you very much.
Because we thought, obviously, the proximity to the train station, the
There's no
downtown,
fire.
you gotta have bicycle racks.
Good. And lighting plan, I didn't see lighting in the plans for the parking garage. Is it in there?
In the exterior.
Sorry? We have not submitted a lighting plan. We intend that we can do that if you want. There's not gonna be any exterior lighting.
No, but
But-
there's a covered area for parking here.
Yeah.
Safety, you know, we'd like to have
We can
plans
submit that, yeah.
that
There's
identify
going
the
to be
lighting.
no exterior lighting and for your back parking
Well,
spaces?
I mean, there may be, lighting for the retail, I mean, but there's
No,
no,
your back parking spaces.
no, not proposed.
Well, we'd like to see a lighting plan.
Sure.
Hopefully that will include lighting that's in the underground parking garage, as well as something in the rear parking lot, which I don't think should be difficult.
ballards or
Too
something.
difficult. Okay?
Yes.
Right? All right. So those were my questions on the notes. You have other questions, Commissioner
A
Francis?
couple. Did you do any porous pavement? All I saw was asphalt, and they said consider porous. Were you able to do any in the exterior parking
I
lot?
want to address that. Mr. Petula of the Huntington Company, who's the site engineer, will address that.
Members of the commission, my name is Michael Butterla, licensed land surveyor, licensed professional engineer here in the state of Connecticut, a member of the Huntington Company office here in town. There were a couple of items that the engineering department wanted us to do to increase our proposed drainage system, which I did and was approved again by law. One suggestion was to consider porous pavement. The parking lot that's not underneath the building is relatively small, so we chose to go with more underground units than go with the porous pavement, simply because maintenance is usually a problem on a small parking lot. We didn't think it, the trade-off was to spend the money and put the units underground. When we submitted, I had no feedback from engineering department that they insisted again on the porous pavement, but we did increase the underground units per Laura Pooley's suggestion.
The plan that you have in front of you now,
Reflects that,
was
yeah.
produced finalized after the code meeting.
That's correct.
Has been
Yeah.
reviewed by Ms. Pooley, and
Yeah.
she has, I believe, approved it.
And then the drainage is going where? Across the post road down to Mill Plain, that sewer?
Where's the drainage?
That's correct. At the entrance, at the exit driveway on Rowan Street, there's an existing catch basin that we'll rebuild. We've got 40 units of 4x4 precast concrete galleys that'll go under the outside parking lot. And then there'll be a 6-inch high overflow pipe that'll feed into the existing storm drainage system. Again, it was reviewed by the engineering department and approved. And after the code, just to repeat myself, after the code meeting, we increased the number of units, so there'll be less burden on the existing drainage system.
Yeah, that's the worst intersection in town.
But there'll be no increase in any of the storms from the 2 to the 100-year storm.
Okay, so you were able to address her 25-year storm?
Yes, we
Very
looked
good.
at all storms from the 2 to the 100-year storm. There'll be no increase.
And hopefully a mitigation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Galante.
Good evening, Mike Galante, Frederick Clark Associates. And I'll give you an overview of the traffic report. And this graphic may actually help you as far as locating the site itself and where we are. Just for reference, Post Road is on the top. Wayne Street, the site is here. That's the yellow building, if you will, on the site itself. This is the Bishop Curtis Apartments, St. Thomas Church, just for reference purposes. Across the street is the dance studio, TD Bank, and there's a very famous traffic engineer that's in that building right there. It's my office. I couldn't resist. We prepared a traffic study for this. Since it's a mixed-use development, we focused on 3 different time periods. Weekday morning, typical commuter peak hour in the morning, residents leaving for work. Typical weekday afternoon, again, residents coming home, and in this case, serving the commercial space in front of the building itself, and then a Saturday midday condition. We did actual traffic counts at the intersection of Post Road and Wayne Street. That included traffic counts and pedestrian counts. It's actually a pretty busy intersection for pedestrians, upgraded by the state as far as traffic signals and pedestrian signals probably about 2 years ago. The peak hours typically were 7:15 to 8:15 in the morning, 5 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday, and then on Saturday 11:45 to 11:45 a.m. to 12:45 p.m. Traffic volumes, reference purposes, Post Road, busy road, 1,400 to 1,600 vehicles. That's a two-way volume during a 1-hour period. In Wayne Street, anywhere from 400 to 600 vehicles, two-way during a 1-hour period. Volume-wise, the weekday afternoon is the highest volumes compared to the weekday morning, the weekday afternoon, and the Saturday midday. The range isn't that much, but the weekday afternoon is the highest. Just for reference, real quick, without going through any more numbers, we counted, as I mentioned, the signalized intersection at the corner of the site. We counted the driveway serving the site itself. We counted the dance studio, TD Bank driveway, and the driveway to 41 Wayne Street during those different time periods. A development of this type generates about 7 to 11 trips during peak hours. That's based on a number of units and the square footage, standard trip rates from the ITE handbook, which a new one's coming out actually tomorrow, so the numbers could change slightly. I'm not sure if they will. But generally speaking, this is a development that generates a very low volume of traffic. So we added this traffic to the roadway system during the peak hours. I'm not going to show you all the charts, but we've gone through the analyses. I'm not going to show you that, but we looked at accident data for the intersection at Ruane and Post Road, a 3-year period, 2014 through 2016, 8 accidents in total for a 3-year period. Half of those accidents were rear-end collisions on Post Road, which is typical of signalized intersections that are busy. Fortunately, no pedestrian activity as far as accidents, which is something we made sure we checked into. On Ruane Street itself, along the site frontage from Post Road at the signalized intersection to Sherman Street to the south of the site itself, 1 accident in a same 3-year period. And that was a side swipe in the same direction. So someone was over the yellow line passing someone, which is surprising. Levels of service analyses, we analyzed the signalized intersection that operates anywhere from B to C, depending on the peak hours. But I will say that the northbound approach on Ruane Street in the afternoon peak operates a level of service F. There is a delay.
and it's somewhat related to the St. Thomas Church or school activities at the end of the day, and certainly related to the dance studio activities that is on the opposite corner. Our traffic on top of that is the 7 to 11 trip, so it doesn't really change anything as far as the results of the analysis. It doesn't show, an increase in delay, for example. It's very, very minor.
Did you say level F?
Yeah.
Wow, I've never heard that before.
In Fairfield? Sure.
From you?
From me?
Have
Oh, I can give you a few
Have we?
examples. Yes. Overall, the intersection works quite well, but the Rowan Street approach, which is the northbound approach, does experience delays. And if you'll see it, if there's something at St. Thomas where there's an activity that's ending, you will see that back up and it clears out. It doesn't last for the entire hour. It may last for a 10-minute period within that peak hour. So when you look at a traffic analysis, you're really focusing on the peak 15 minutes within the peak hour. So we're kind of looking at the worst case scenario. So yeah, it does show up. And it does clear out. I can attest to that. One table that I'm not going to show, but I have, and it's in the report, is the famous table that gives you the increase in traffic related to current traffic volumes on the roads. And we use the Post Road Rowan Street intersection, and that increase in delay is about 0.5%. If you look at the volume of traffic, and then we add the site traffic on top of it, our site traffic is approximately 90% of the traffic is going through the Post Road Rowan Street signalized intersection during peak hours. We do have about 10% traveling southbound on Rowan Street away from the Post Road during the peak hours. That's a quick summary. All the charts that I show you are in the report itself. There's nothing new. And then as far as site distance, we did speed runs on Rowan Street, and you typically do those runs during off-peak hours, meaning when there isn't that delay that we talked about a second ago, seriously. So with those counts are done, the speed runs are done at 10 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we actually did some on Saturday. But the speeds were 15 miles per hour southbound, 19 miles per hour northbound, and that translates into site distance. And you need 210 feet looking from the driveway, which is purposely put at the south side of the property, the exit drive. You need 210 feet to the Post Road intersection, and we have 210 feet of site distance. To the south, we have much more distance. We need the same, actually we need 166 feet to the south. We have well over 200 feet, so we meet the standards as far as site distance. And the driveway placements were purposely put where they were to match and provide the site distance. That's a summary of the traffic report, and I can answer any questions you may have. And I purposely tried to speed it up a little bit.
Any questions for Mr. Galante? No? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
As I said at the outset, I mean, this commission has reviewed numerous and very thoroughly and diligently 8-30G applications. So I know very well that many of the commissioners are well familiar with the legal standards, but I think it's important for the sake of the record that we do take a second to make clear that if the application is brought pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G, the standard is that upon appeal from the denial of such an affordable housing application, the commission has the burden of proving, based upon the evidence of record before the commission, that, and I quote from the case law, that the decision is necessary to protect a substantial public interest in health, safety, and other matters which the commission may legally consider. Such public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, and such public interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. Those cases, that statement came from a fairly most recent decision by the appellate court, the Brynmore Properties LLC versus Planning and Zoning Commission of Lisbon, a 2016 case. What's equally clear from the case law, the Wisniewski case, that an 8-30G application cannot be denied based upon non-compliance with traditional provisions of the zoning regulations, unless the non-compliance with a particular regulation can be shown to result in a situation where it is necessary to protect a established substantial public interest in safety that clearly outweighs the need for affordable housing. So I know the commission is well aware of this, but I think that under 8-30G, your focus is not compliance with your own regulations. It is whether or not there is evidence, substantial evidence to the record, to support a finding that there is a significant likelihood of a public health and safety issue that cannot be cured by a condition and that outweighs the need for affordable housing. And here, where we have the WPCA approval, the email from the fire marshal, the review by your town engineering department, and Mr. Galante's testimony, I'd respectfully submit to you that, we've met that standard to establish that there are no such impacts associated with this project. So by way of summary and subject to any final comments, depending on comments from the public, we need affordable housing in Fairfield. The commission knows that. When I first came before this commission with my first affordable housing application, I was probably preachy. Nobody should preach to this commission. This commission has an exemplary track record with regard to the review and consideration of 8-30G applications and understanding the context of those applications as far as the statute, and has done great things in the last 2 or 3 years to increase affordable housing. However, having said that, our affordable housing stock in this community is still somewhere hovering around 3%, well below the 10% that the statute requires. So we're making strides here. We take affordable housing seriously, but this is an excellent location for such multifamily residential housing. Its proximity to downtown and the railroad station, I think, is ideal. In addition to serving the goal of providing 4 units of affordable housing, it's going to add more vibrancy, excitement to our downtown center business district. We're going to have people who are going to be utilizing the restaurants, walking to the shops, and so on. And those people, we think, substantially will be people, empty nesters, younger people who want to stay in the community. There'll be opportunities in this type of housing, hopefully for town employees, teachers, police, fire. We need more affordable housing in the community. This commission has been mindful of that and also very diligent in trying to benefit projects that are well situated in terms of their location and well planned out in terms of their density. And we think this is yet another one of those, and we would hope, in accordance with the affirmative recommendation of the Affordable Housing Committee, that you'd approve this application. And we appreciate your time and attention.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions? Commissioner Noonan?
I do. Yes, sir. In looking at the code minutes, page 2 of the code minutes, I guess 25 of your submission.
Yes.
The tree warden notes that the plan appears all parking will be under the building.
Yeah, but there are 7 spaces not under the building.
No,
Yeah, right.
And I kind of made that mistake too, I think, looking at the rendering. It didn't look like they were out. But he bases that, no trees are required because he thought everything was underneath.
Well, he was right in the sense that there's really no, we'll submit a landscaping plan, but there is no parking lot tree requirement if you have under the 10 spaces. And we have 7 external spaces. So I think that's what he was trying to imply. I don't mean to speak for him, but.
No, and then with 13 spots with 12 units, I probably already know the answer, but do you foresee an issue with if there's snow accumulation, losing a spot or 2
No.
in the winter, and all of a sudden now you have 11 spots,
No.
12 units?
As we've done in other developments of this kind, we will have to make arrangements for removal of snow. We don't have the benefit or the luxury of stockpiling snow on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Mayor.
Regarding the 13 parking spaces, would St. Thomas or has anyone approached St. Thomas about visitors parking in the St. Thomas parking lot?
We've not had, that I'm aware, I've had no such conversations. As I said, the principal of 1675 also happens to be the owner, the managing member of the entity that owns the Curtis House. But beyond that, we've not had any considerations. And we do feel strongly that the 13 spaces, especially in light of the nature of the units and their proximity to downtown and the train station, will be more than sufficient to meet the needs of our residents.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this? Not too many faces in the crowd.
Beaumont Street. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I'd like to talk about what you first talked about. I'd like to go back to Commissioner Noonan's point about a balancing involving 830G. I'm not at all convinced that this is a legitimate 830G application. 830G never mentions anywhere mixed use. Each year there are about 40 amendments to 830G that are submitted to the Legislative Housing Committee. I've not been able to find a single one of those that mentions mixed use under 830G. I've been to many sessions on 830G in Hartford. Mixed use is never discussed. I spoke to Mike Santoro, who's responsible to the Connecticut Department of Housing for 830G. He told me he doesn't think that 830G was intended to, quote, provide a developer with the right to use the powers of 830G for a commercial purpose, unquote. Attorney Fallon mentioned at the beginning that he thought there was one of these developments in Branford. I think he may have meant Old Saybrook. Did you?
I meant Old Saybrook.
Right, okay. Christine Nelson, who's the town planner of Old Saybrook, I spoke to her about this. There's a large project in Old Saybrook called Marina Village Between the Bridges. It includes commercial and residential buildings as well as a marina. There is an 830G component of that project, but it's separate from any of the commercial use. In fact, the applicant originally submitted a zoning regulation that would have exempted the entire project, the commercial and residential components, from zoning regulations under 830G. It was not passed, and the developer did not appeal that. There's over 10,000 affordable housing units created by 830G in Connecticut without a mixed-use component. If mixed use was easily available and was financially lucrative for developers, why isn't it being used? Affordable housing advocates in Connecticut who are always looking for ways to create more affordable housing units and who support 830G have stayed away from advocating for mixed-use 830G development. Even in the Fairfield's Affordable Housing Committee letter, they note misgivings about the use of 830G here. Why is there resistance to mixed use under 830G? I think it's for two reasons. One is that mixed use adds a powerful force to 830G. A developer could use 830G for commercial development exempt from zoning regulations as long as there was a reasonable 830G residential component, certainly more than one unit in a big building. You could easily end up with multi-story buildings with retail and office space and a minimal number of affordable units on upper floors. It also, I think, hasn't been done because it opens up to the balancing act that Commissioner Noonan mentioned. It's separate from just looking at health and safety. You have a new balancing act that was included in the Greenwich legal case. I'd like to turn to a different aspect that I think is questionable here. On the 830G does not contemplate the inclusion of a penthouse unit in 830G housing. The New York City Building Code defines a penthouse as residence on the top of a building with outdoor space. Penthouses often have amenities not found in units on lower floors. 830G requires that affordable units have to be of comparable size to market rate units and have to be dispersed throughout a building. As we see in the case at 1675 Post Road, the penthouse is the largest unit. It's the only unit on the top floor. It's the only unit with two balconies. It's the only unit with direct access to the only shared amenity in the building, the common area roof deck. It's also the only unit that has an unobstructed view. Although the penthouse is counted in the building's total number of apartments under the 830G formula, it exists outside the normal framework of 830G because there are no comparable affordable units in the building. In the Old Saybrook project that I mentioned earlier, the developer spread the affordable units around in the development and actually originally none of them had a water view. A condition of approval was that they had to change the location of units so that they had water views. There's an issue of degree here. This penthouse is only 10% bigger than the two-bedroom units on lower floors. The first floor commercial space is only around 1,000 feet. We're talking here about virtually if there's a transgression here, it's virtually de minimis. But even so, it's outside the intent of 830G. No matter how small it is, it's outside the intent of 830G. The precedent of 830G mixed use requires careful thought by all of you, and obviously you've already started doing that. The next application may simply have a larger penthouse, may have an extra non-residential floor. Things could escalate. Where's the balancing act? I don't know. But once you've approved one of these, where do you stop? You can certainly reject any future mixed-use application if you choose to do so, but I think we all know how lawyers use precedent. We've already seen Attorney Fallon use 2 precedents here today. We've seen 830G projects in Fairfield that seem wrenchingly out of place due to size, location, or both. Bronson Road, an 830G project that Attorney Fallon represents, comes to mind. It's important that you do not expand the scope of 830G so that we see more projects in Fairfield, but now with a commercial component. One specific area of concern I have is the potential to build large mixed-use buildings on residential streets near the downtown. In no way do I oppose mixed use, especially in locations like 1675 Post Road. You may be aware that Ridgefield recently amended their zoning regulations to encourage mixed-use development downtown. They added incentives for mixed use downtown because they're trying to get developers not to use 830G. Mixed use with an affordable component is a powerful incentive to developers, but as Ridgefield wisely concluded, it should occur outside the framework of 830G. I'm concerned that the proposal for 1675 Post Road sandwiches some affordable units between commercial space and a penthouse. This applicant had and has other options. They could have gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals, as One Post Road did. They could have designed a smaller building. Instead, they're asking you for the protection of 830G in a way that 830G was not meant to be used. If you decide to approve this application, and I think it's a good application, well presented by Attorney Fallon, that you should maybe look at crafting conditions of approval that go beyond the 830G requirements so that you sort of penalize the applicant for misuse of 830G. How would you do that? Well, one way to do it might be to make the penthouse an affordable unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. River. Anyone else have any comments? Members of the public? No? Very good. Mr. Fallon, any rebuttal?
Oh, yeah. My friend Jan, I can't let him do that. Listen, Jan and I have spoken about this application because he has a unique and admirable interest in affordable housing, and he says he's not a lawyer, but he obviously is I consider him a colleague when it comes to these 8-30G applications. However, I don't see no penthouse here. What I have is one unit on the upper floor that, as Jan said himself, is about 10% larger than the other 2-bedroom units in the development. And as he himself, I don't know if he used the word de minimis, but I think that's what he was intending. Every 8-30G has the largest unit somewhere. Somebody's got to have a unit that's the largest. Interestingly, as I pointed out to Jan in our conversations, in terms of this concept of manipulating 8-30G, let's suppose from my calculation, it's sort of the reverse of what we were talking about with the first floor. Let's suppose, okay, well, Fallon, you can't count, the penthouse unit. Well, now I have 11 units, and I still have to go for affordable, so I'm not cheating anybody.
Well, why I don't understand that. Why do we not count the penthouse?
Well,
and as an aside,
all I'm saying is, if the idea is that I am still, whether I have 11 units or 12 units, under the 30% scenario, I still have to make 4 of those units affordable. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay.
And with respect to the de minimis comment, I think what he meant was if you look at it on just the square footage, then it's only 10% and it might appear de minimis. But this is the penthouse, the top floor.
It's not a penthouse.
This is the only unit that has 2 balconies.
Right.
This is the only unit that has direct access to the substantial shared terrace that's on that floor. It's the only unit that has unobstructed views, and when you take all of those other things into account, maybe it's not so de minimis, and that's what he was driving
And the
at.
response to that I would make in the context of, even if you accepted that premise for the sake of the discussion,
Right.
that doesn't disqualify it as an 8-30G. All that is said in the statute is that the affordable units have to be generally comparable to the market rate units. These 4 affordable units are certainly, and I'm just accepting for the sake of argument that analysis, comparable to the other 7 units, and the fact that there might be one unit that some people, yourself or Jan or myself, might perceive to be, well, that's the nicest unit. That doesn't mean that each and every unit has to be identical in an 8-30G. So that's my position on that. And it's really, I think, you're going to make the decision. But to characterize this as somebody sandwiching some affordable units between retail and a penthouse, to me, is not reasonable. What you have here is a 16,700 square foot building with about 1,040 square feet of amenity retail on the first floor, 12 units of housing, of which 4 will be affordable. The units are generally consistent in style, size, amenities. The one unit is 10% larger than the others and may have the best views because it's on the 5th floor. But you look at that analysis in the context of the way the courts approach 8-30G and the facilitation of its purpose, which is affordable units, and I don't think it's a very strong argument. And that gets to the second point, which I will not belabor, but I will close with. The statute doesn't mention mixed use. The legislative history doesn't mention mixed use, but that doesn't mean mixed use is excluded. The old Saybrook project, I spoke directly to someone who the commission knows, Mr. Perance, who's the town attorney of Old Saybrook. And he would say to you that that is a mixed-use 8-30G because there is a component that is housing, and there's a component that's a marina and other retail amenity.
Yeah.
And
I think that the question is, was the 830G component applied for as a separate, entity, if you will?
my understanding is it was not.
It's not.
But let's talk about what, I believe that's the case, but let's talk about what we do know. And it
Is
gets
there
back.
commercial in that building?
Pardon?
Is there commercial
I don't
space
know.
in that building?
I don't know. But I go back to where we
Because
were.
the implication that I got from Mr. Reber's comments was that while the overall parcel had on it different uses, that the residential building as an affordable housing building under 830G was a standalone.
The city attorney.
It wasn't a combination of commercial and residential within one facility.
The town attorney, all I can tell you is qualified it, and the commission qualified it, as an overall 8-30 mixed-use component.
Okay. Are you aware of other 830G projects?
I am
in
told by
which-
Mr. Hollister that he has just completed a 8-30G in Litchfield, which was the conversion of a bank/office building that involved retail on the first floor and units of housing above.
And that was under 830G?
Correct. But it's really not that complicated. I think what it comes back to, and Mr. Noonan and yourself, and we've all discussed it tonight, it's basically whether or not, looking at the application as a whole, common sense and the purpose of the statute tell you that this is in fact a qualified 8-30G affordable housing application. This application, with its de minimis retail element of some 6% of the other overall square footage, shouldn't be denied, because at some point in time somebody may come before you, like the lady in Greenwich, with, I want an 1,800 square foot expansion of my commercial building, I'm going to put one affordable housing unit on top, so take that. Common sense tells you that this is a qualified 8-30G application. It also tells you that it is consistent with the downtown comprehensive plan that you yourself have established. And it also tells you that it helps facilitate a better residential / 8-30G development because it has an amenity that is appropriate and consistent with other mixed use in this very neighborhood. So, I will leave it to you. As I said, this whole conversation, I suppose, is avoided if we put a residential unit on the first floor and prescribe that 13th parking space for that. But as Mr. Granoff pointed out, based upon what they're trying to do here in terms of a successful, high-level community development, that's really not where we would like to go. And there is no legal reason, based upon my research, that I would think you would not qualify this project and lose the benefit of the amenity retail because it is so de minimis. And I think it is, and I think the case law supports that as well. So, appreciate everybody's attention. And
Excellent. Does anyone have any final questions for Mr. Fallon? No? Very good. Sure. Mr.
You
Levy?
put an exercise studio on the first floor for the benefit of all the residents.
Hmm?
Would that be, then,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose it would, although if that were open, if that were only open, available to the residents, sure, then it's probably, who knows what it is, but it's not, we're probably not having the same mixed-use discussion.
No, we're not. And that is frankly a means to avoid the entire argument, because apartment buildings typically have amenities for their residents, including things like a fitness center or other things.
And this will be the type of retail that will be a nice amenity for the residents. The only thing is, we want it to also be a nice amenity for our downtown
Sure.
patrons.
You keep calling it an amenity commercial space.
Right.
An amenity is something that is open for the residents of a facility.
Right.
It's an amenity to the residents.
This is an amenity to downtown.
Commercial space. No,
It is.
the buildings, the commercial spaces and I don't want to argue about it.
No.
The commercial spaces in the downtown area of Fairfield are not amenities. They're not amenity commercial spaces. Okay? They're commercial spaces. They're zoned commercial. They're commercial uses.
Right.
This is a commercial space which you're going to lease to a third-party tenant.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a retail store. It's going to have a sign on the front. You've got it right here.
Right.
Retail store.
Right.
Says it on your...
I
on your-
apologize for my use
No.
of the term amenity. I just meant to imply it would be the type of a retail, probably considering the size and location, that would have a nice presence, maybe a coffee shop, a bakery, something that would...
Your much stronger argument
because
is that it fits within our existing regulations to have commercial on the ground floor.
Yep.
It's a mixed use according to those terms, et cetera, et cetera.
I rest my case.
Okay?
Thank you for summarizing for me.
A comment.
Commissioner Fritz.
You could put the exercise room on the top floor and reduce the size of that apartment a little.
We don't choose to do that.
You could.
I mean, why be punitive? Because, what we're going to have now an 8-30G when I bring them before you and say, it's sort of be like the proletariat, the scene in Dr. Zhivago when he comes home from the war. 15 people could have lived in this apartment. Look, I just, I don't think that's where we should go. There's no prohibition under the statute that one unit can't be the nicest. What can't happen is all the units are nicer, but the affordable units are they're smaller, they're whatever. That's what we're doing here. If you look at the sheet, and if you look at what the Affordable Housing Committee is prescribing, the designated affordable units will be comparable in size to their brother and sister units, 1 and 2 bedroom throughout the complex.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Before you close, it's not actually for Mr. Fallon. I think it's probably more directed at staff or even perhaps you for clarification. We've been presented with some pretty intense legal analysis tonight, and I'm not an attorney, so is there, can we get like a
a summary from, I don't know, the town attorney or someone on staff that would explain what the different opinions are or something?
You now requested an opinion from the town attorney on the interpretation of the statute and the case law. And we're free to consult with him after the public hearing and take that into account during our deliberations.
I think you should.
All right.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Fallon. Close the public hearing, and I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you all.